Good evening. It is 6 o'clock on January 13th, 2026. This is the first meeting of the year of the Norwalk Conservation Commission and Inland Wetland Agency. Could we have roll call, please?
Certainly. Chairman Clackey,
Here.
Commissioner Knight,
Here.
Commissioner Vanette,
Here.
Commissioner Lum,
Here.
Commissioner Healy,
Here.
Commissioner Breslin.
Here.
I think that is it, but you do have an excess of a quorum, so you are all set, Steve.
Great. Thanks. Is anyone from the public logged in to comment on?
So you do have some attendees. So on our agenda, there is a public comment or public participation, technically it says. This is different than the public hearing. So it's for making a general comment regarding conservation issues or general inland wetland issues. And it is not to be used for speaking about any particular application that is on tonight's agenda. The commission has specific public hearings when they can accept public comment on any of the specific items listed on the agenda. So if you have comments regarding nothing on the agenda, it's kind of the opposite of city council, then you can use the raise your hand feature to raise your hand and give general comments. Otherwise, we will move on. I don't see any hands coming up, so I think we're either here for the public hearing that's later or listening in.
Okay, moving on then to receipt and discussion for S25-659 Longshore Avenue, Manresa. This is the creation. Well, I'll let you intro it, Alexis.
Sure. So this is an activity application as noted by the letter S in the front. And I would recommend that the agency consider tabling any discussion or presentation from the applicant on this application because it is an activity application that is predicated on the existence of wetland areas that are being considered later on in your agenda for the map amendment. So just a broad brush, the application seeks to do some physical improvements to the site to enable the better access and public parking at the site and develop some recreation trails within the northern part of the site. If you remember, you have another pending application regarding the map amendments that would seek to no longer delineate two areas previously delineated wetlands within the same northern section. Just to give you some more background, so whenever an applicant makes a application to the Planning and Zoning Commission, whether it's a special permit or a site plan review, or a few other applications, if there are inland wetlands, well, if there are regulated activities involved, so any activity adjacent to an inland wetland or watercourse, then that applicant is also obligated to file concurrently an inland wetland application in front of you. The applicant wants to move their Planning and Zoning Commission review to get that on the docket, to get it moving. But I'd say that for your review, I would again recommend that it come after the map amendment. Once you've made that determination, you can either circle back and receive a full presentation from the applicant if that's necessary, or if it's not necessary, then the applicant would withdraw the inland wetland application.
So should I try to summarize that?
Put it in plain speak? Sure.
Well, into what I think what we've discussed and what I think I heard is that um, the application is in front of us. It may or may not be relevant 2 weeks from now after we have voted on what is being discussed during the public hearing tonight. So we can, at the applicant's desire, however you would say it, go ahead and listen to what you've got prepared, or we can save the time, if you don't mind waiting a couple weeks to see how it shakes out, which may make the whole conversation moot. So, Liz and Co.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Liz Suchy of Carmody Torrance. That's exactly correct. And I would just add one little bit of additional information that the petition to amend the regulations was filed with this commission back in September. And had we been able to move it through the process, the normal process, we would have had a determination by now, and we wouldn't be in this awkward application that needed to be filed because we filed a zoning application coming onto your agenda the same night as public hearing on a map amendment. But if you would be willing to move any further discussion, presentation on the significant activity application until after the MECR presentation and you decide the petition to amend, I think that would probably be a better course of action.
Okay. So we'll do that. So this team should hang tight. We've got, well, we can't start public hearing until 7 o'clock anyway, so we'll move forward with our agenda. Circle back to the public hearing, and then I don't know, Alexis, we can always after the public hearing come back to 650 S25 659 if we wanted to, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, all right. So hearing no objections, we don't need to edit the schedule at all. I don't think. We can just move forward until, of course, the point comes when we're going to be early for our public hearing, and we'll edit the schedule then, the agenda. Okay, so yeah, Manresa folks, just hang tight. So moving on to S25-660 for Singing Woods Road.
So this is an application for construction of a new house on a currently vacant lot. The lot does include an inland wetland, and the activity is within the upland review area of that wetland. And so a permit is required. I guess if I can maybe just have the applicant begin with their presentation, if you could maybe just start with the location of Singing Woods Road, that would be great.
Good evening. I'm Bill Kenny, the principal of William Kenny Associates in Fairfield, professional wetland scientist, soil scientist, and landscape architect. We are working for the applicant on this project, and in association partnership with Rocco V. D'Andrea Inc. from Riverside, and Brian French is here this evening, the professional engineer from D'Andrea's office. They are responsible for the overall site development plan, and we packaged the application and submitted that, as well as we prepared a wetland buffer planting plan or enhancement plan. Perhaps if Brian is available, he could review the engineering, and then I could certainly review the buffer planting. And this Singing Woods is located in the northern portion of town, north of the Parkway. And this was a subdivision that you reviewed in the last year or so. One house has been built where there was some remediation work that occurred, which was quite successful, I believe. There had been dumping on the property for decades, and the new owner agreed to remove that material and reestablish the wetlands and plant with native plants and control the invasive vegetation.
And so this is the lot that's being for consideration tonight.
Yes. in the southeast corner, and the house to the north has been constructed. And perhaps the house to the west, which is well beyond any wetland or upland review area. I'm not sure if that's under construction now or not. I can't recall. I think it might be. Brian probably knows. If
Okay.
Brian isn't able, I see he's on the list. I don't know
Yeah.
if he's.
Can you hear me
Right.
now?
Yes.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Hello, yeah. My name is Brian French. I'm with Rocco DeAndrea, and just I'd worked on the design, and yes, so I mean the lot is currently this lot in particular hasn't been the last of 4 lots which haven't been started yet, and basically yeah, it's a simple it kind of lies at a highland. There's actually 3 separate watersheds, and the design is simple, single family, straightforward. We kind of contained all the runoff in one retention system in the
Brian,
back.
can I actually real quick, is there
Yeah.
a particular drawing that you'd like to share or like Alexis to share?
Yeah, I can
Um,
share if you
Visual
would
aids
like.
always help.
It's basically that I'm going over the development plan. It's
I will share them.
in it's pretty simplistic in the way that all the impervious runoff collects in one retention system. You could see to the north of the lot, and it's filtered um, and retains the required. It meets all the town drainage requirements for retention and detention, and it has an overflow level spreader at the north side of the lot where it will continue and eventually, get down to the wetlands. But the um, the design in general, it's all retained in one retention system. There's a portion of the site which continues towards Singing Woods Road, but that's minimal. And I think the priority of the minority of the runoff is collected by the back drainage system. I'm
Alexis,
not sure if there's any specific drainage questions, but with the layout or the house is situated at the relative high point of the lot. The septic is just to the east, and I think it is tight with the wetlands, and we tried to maintain a separation the best we could by pulling the house as far west as we could, and same with the septic, kind of maintaining the buffer zones, and combined with Bill Kenny's plan, I think provides a moderate design for the layout of the lot.
and Alexis, could you please highlight for us the 100-foot upland review line?
Yes, so this is the wetland here with the little flag symbol. And then the 100-foot upland review area is this arc here.
So most of the site is within either the wetland or the upland review area. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Do we have dimensions, Brian, as far as how close the house and drainage system and septic system are from the wetland line?
Just the disturbance is more or less, I think, the grading goes down. I think Bill was able to keep it about 6 feet off. Now our disturbance shows the silt fence at the closest point about 6 feet off of the wetland, but the house is, let's just see, I have about 50 feet from the corner of the wetland there. So, majority, it's hard to state, obviously the 100-foot upland area extends well into the house, but like I said, pushing the house as far west and south as we could to keep it away from the wetlands.
Okay. It looks like there's a bunch of trees coming down too.
Yes, there are. And which when you have an undeveloped lot, yes, there tends to be quite a few trees, and I'm not sure. I could get the number for you. I don't know if Bill has a number offhand, but I can find out if you give me 1 minute. Just
While you're looking that up,
yeah.
Ms. Knight, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to try to understand how this was distinct or different from the one that came, the Singing Woods application that came in 2024
Mm,
The,
for this site.
Thank you. That was my question, what I was looking for.
how it compares to the layout that was shown for the overall subdivision.
Correct.
Um, I mean, the lot was subdivided a while back, and as far as um, the initial subdivision, I don't recall exactly what that that layout showed.
It's on the website. So I mean, I'm looking at it now trying to compare and look because I know we had a lot of
Uh,
discussion about, you know, approval subject to the dwelling being outside of the upland review area.
right.
So
You know,
just interject my recollection. I can stop sharing my screen and look for that information. But there was no subdivision application before you. There was this lot here, which had the previous filling, and subsequently the same applicant came in and proposed construction of a kind of a development area in this general area and restoration of the filled wetland. And so the wetland line is now closer to kind of this arc instead of back there. And then these lots, I cannot remember dates for anything, so I'm not going to even throw out a date, but a previous subdivision, I believe, a subdivision that was approved prior to the existence of the Inland Wetland Agency was previously approved, and it was determined that those lots that the tax assessor had previously merged these lots. There was nothing actually filed on the land records that showed their merging, and they remained separate approved building lots.
So we are stuck with the lots, but we are not held to any previous approval for how they're used other than the one that's to the north that came across our desks a year or so ago. Last year.
Right. So this is a previously approved lot, so it is allowed to be developed to its minimal use, which is with a single family residence.
Okay, very good. All right, Mr. Frencher Kenny, is there more that you'd like to throw at us here?
Sure. May I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Just take me a second here.
Alexis's computer needs a break once in a while anyway.
Otherwise it crashes.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So we've prepared this plan and we've got traditional plan view and then a plant list and planting details and some other details and a legend. And if we zoom in here on the plan, as Alexa mentioned, yeah, the wetland here, and then the 100-foot here. We've proposed a boundary here between the naturalized area of the property, the woodland to remain the wetlands entirely in that area, and then a buffer. We are showing the current proposal for the development does encroach into this area, so we're showing restoration of that. It encroaches slightly here.
I'm sorry, what encroaches there?
Some grading to complete the development, the house and septic and
Okay, so that's that line of disturbance.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we're showing revegetating that area as well as additional planting of understory trees and shrubs in these areas. This is, yeah, so, and then, as Brian mentioned, the rest of the site has the house in the driveway, and the house is about 50 feet away. I think it is interesting that, or helpful, that the driveway and the house do pitch, primarily most of it pitches to the north, both the surface groundwater as well as the water that's collected and put into the infiltration system. And so that's not being directed to, the majority of that is not being directed to the wetland that actually is on the property here. It's, if it reaches a wetland, it'll be after it passes through the property to the north, the lot to the north. So it's
Do
got
we
a,
know how far away the wetland line is on the adjacent property?
it's, so this is,
Oh, I see. So it's all to the
yeah,
north. There's none to the west at all.
yes,
Got it.
yes.
Okay.
So the water's going.
Okay. Devin, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I see that this is just a wetland buffer enhancement plan. Is there an additional planting plan for the remainder of the property, or is this?
Not at this time. So it needs, that's to be determined by the builder. Hasn't been.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have
So
any, sorry, do we have an aerial photograph of
that's
this thing?
exactly what I was gonna say. Can we just do a quick little overlay
I just need to see it.
just to confirm what I think is happening here?
Yeah. I could take a few
Maybe
minutes to pull one
Alexis
up, or Alexis, do you have one handy?
Yeah, I can show one if you like.
Okay.
Second.
In the meantime, Devin, do you have an additional question or oh, okay, you took
No,
mine down.
sorry, I didn't put
That's right.
Okay, so this does not show correct property lines. So I will start with that disclaimer. The property line comes across here. And the wetland area is not very clear in the aerial, but it's approximately in this location here. This is 2024 before development started on this lot. This is a former structure. And then there's the mentioned chicken coop, and that's this structure here.
Could we, could we have a vertical and then flip through a couple of seasons, please?
And again, there's the coop drawn in the line, and this is your wetland area. Here that continues into the wetland area on the property to the north. And then this is the deciduous woodland that's adjacent to the wetland, and then there is some historic lawn that had been part of Six Singing Woods and the previous chicken coop.
Can we get an idea of the canopy, please?
Um,
Can you give us some leaves?
There
you go.
It's a fairly dense,
Yeah.
A lot of deciduous trees.
So I'm just going to say it unless someone else wants to. I don't really know how we responded to the fact that there's wetland on this site, other than the fact that you're not proposing any work within it.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You couldn't hear me?
Just the very end, I couldn't hear.
Oh, I don't think there's been any response to the fact that there's a wetland on the site, other than the fact that you're not proposing work within the wetland. I think the border it exists, but doesn't come anywhere close to maintaining any of the function of what's happening there. You've got a solid canopy above undisturbed land, and what's being proposed is clear cutting and lawn. So being sensitive to the fact that, you have to be able to build a house on the property. No one's going to argue that. I think there's a lot more that could be done to respond to the wetland and respecting the upland review area.
Are you looking for a wider buffer additional plantings or?
Well, cutting down and replanting is never as good as leaving trees alone.
Sure.
So let's start there. Um, yeah, I mean, I think any work within the upland review area, including removing of trees, grading, planting lawn, et cetera, should be minimized.
Sorry, what was the lot size? One more time, if I missed that.
It was just about 1 acre.
1 acre.
Just, yeah. And if I could ask in regards to the development and layout and in respect to trying to even, I made attempts to try to pull the development away from the wetlands the best I could and it's a modest size house and the driveway's on the complete opposite side. The grading was kept to the minimum grading per per town regulations, and we really tried to pull everything basically as far away as we could. And I'm just trying to think from a design point, what you might be looking at as far as changes to improve or be less impeding on the wetlands.
Yeah, I just want to surround the whole house with a lawn. I would
I
start
think
there.
personally, one of my biggest issues with this is 6 feet from the wetland is just, I don't understand what that bump out area is for. Where there was that line that you had,
It's
uh,
grading. They didn't want there's adjusting the grade for the lawn, essentially. Maybe Brian can explain better than I can.
Yeah, well, I mean the grading standards, require certain rise and run, and then the grading around the house, it's it's kept relatively close to existing features, and I think they want to try to just not disturb with large amounts of grading. So we kept it pretty as close to existing conditions as possible. Um, as far as the grading, there is some room. I see some trees that possibly could remain kept closer to the wetlands.
yeah.
And that's where there is a little bit less grading down in that point. So I could understand, maybe removing less trees there. Um, but the grading, is pulled back as tight as it could be to the house and the septic.
Given the other choices that were made. Yep. Okay. So I hear what you're saying. Does anybody else have questions?
Yeah, I have one probably for Bill Kenny. Um, in that wetland area, it's a wooded wetland. Did you happen to observe, or do you know if there's any, what the biodiversity is in there, in that wetland area? With Steve asking about the trees, I totally agree with Steve. It's like, I think there's too many trees coming down, but those trees are important to the wetlands as a whole. So did you find anything down in that wetlands that
We did
it's going to be
review,
affected?
right. The higher quality wetlands of this combined wetland system is on the lot to the north, and they're at the north end of that lot. This is more of a sloping system, and it's an it's up above the lower lying larger wetland to the north. And because it's sloping and it's at the dry end of the wetland, so its habitat is in many ways very similar to the upland habitat that is immediately adjacent to it. So we didn't find any. It's very typical red maple swamp that supports and being in a residential neighborhood, it supports generalist species. It doesn't support any species that require very specific habitat requirements. There's no vernal pool habitat there or other like interior forest species where you need 300 feet of forest all around the wetland to provide a buffer and then many, many acres of wetland too. So it's your typical red maple swamp in suburban Fairfield County on the, as far as red maple swamps go, it's on the dry end, on the upper slope end of wetlands. So it's very common habitat and doesn't support unusual or rare species.
And Bill, that's included in your project narrative document?
Yes, and the lot to the north had habitat to possibly could it physically, if the vernal pool species lived there, it could support their breeding and development. And we had studied the lot to the north in the past and found that there was no use of those pool areas to support. We found no evidence of any breeding or development in those pool areas, and it's probably because the pools are critical, but also a very large surrounding forest is critical to that. And with the homes surrounding the wetland, it doesn't appear that there's an adequate forest surrounding this area to support vernal pool amphibians. So,
Okay. Lise?
Yes, for Mr. Kenny, question for you. So I did see that there's no support of any obligate species in the area, so thank you for that information. That is helpful to us. I suppose, and maybe other commissioners chime in, overall, even though the buffer is there, with the amount of trees that look like that are, proposed to be removed, it seems like overall the physical space would change drastically, and whether the buffer's there or not, I think eventually that would, or not eventually, like at the moment, that would be an impediment to the wetland itself. And so I think what would be helpful to us is perhaps a more specific plan of the area directly around the house, because if that's all just going to be grass and lawn, ultimately buffer or not, 50 feet, is, I would say, maybe professional, unprofessional opinion. I think that that's risky at the moment, not just in the future. And so if we could have perhaps a more specific planting plan. And I also did see in the project narrative that perhaps there is another plan to keep more of the trees and get rid of them. Do you have a secondary plan perhaps that we could see to see what that plan might look like with the existing trees, especially if they are native? I feel like even for your clients, perhaps that's more favorable to them, because ultimately caring for young trees, that would be a great cost. So we just want to help you all out in that sense as well.
absolutely, we'll definitely review that before and provide you with information at the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
So on that note, the last line of the project narrative says, an alternative to this design would be to keep the existing trees and reduce the number of proposed trees. I'm not exactly sure, does that line apply to the majority of the site or just the closest area to the wetland?
I think it's the closest area to the wetland.
Could it apply to more of the site?
I believe so. We'll
Okay.
certainly review that with the applicant and provide you with different additional feedback at the next meeting.
Great. Okay. Do any other commissioners have questions? Awesome. All right. Thanks for your time, and we look forward to seeing maybe some adjustments in a couple of weeks.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Moving on then to declaratory rulings. 2 East Rocks Road / Crossland property, Norwalk Urban Trails project. And by the way, hey, Alexis, I'm going to try again to open the link that you sent. I wasn't able to get it, or is it online? Yeah, and you are muted.
It is not online. I had just sent you the, so let me know if you cannot. I'll show it on my screen. So
I just wasn't quite sure which email address to use, so I just didn't do it.
So declaratory rulings are a request from somebody that wants to do something where they declare that they are exempt from the inland wetland regulations for one or two reasons. They're either proposing to do an as-of-right activity or a non-regulated activity. I'm trying to click and talk at the same time, and I can never do that. And in section, let's pull up the regulations in chapter 4 of the inland wetland regulations, it reviews certain permitted operations and uses, and these are directly from the state statutes and the State Inland Wetland Act. Paragraph A has to do with as of right activities. And this is not one of those. But paragraph B talks about the following operations and uses shall be permitted as non-regulated uses in wetlands and watercourses, provided that they do not disturb the natural and indigenous character of the wetland and watercourse. So that's kind of the determination of the evening. And under that, it lists different activities, and one of those is outdoor recreation, including a whole list of things that includes trails and hiking. So I'll do a quick overview. There's staff from the Rec and Parks Department here, and the designer of the trail here as well. So you two can chime in at any time. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of where we are. The city-owned land, which I refer to as the Crossland parcel, because that was the developer that owned it before the city acquired it. It's these two lots here. So for reference, this is Newtown Ave, and this is where Allen Road comes off of Newtown Ave, and this is East Rocks Road. Woods Pond is here, another city-owned property. The senior center is here off of Allen Road. Down here is Blake Street, and so there's an actual frontage off of Blake, of East Ave, and technically onto Burlington Court, and then additionally it abuts the Woods Pond property. So that's where we're within this property. The majority of the property is wetlands, and it contains the Woods Pond Brook, which is the brook that exits the pond and continues until it meets Betts Pond Brook further down. So that's where we are. Let me stop sharing this and switch to sharing PDF real quick. So this is the park. North is to the left of the screen. This is Woods Pond, and this is the Crossland property. And this is the trail system that was proposed. So the Rec and Park Department received a grant to develop trails. More passive recreation has been identified as a want through both the POCD, the Plan of Conservation and Development, as well as the even more recent Master Plan of Parks. And the Rec and Parks Department, I believe, had two public information sessions, and as a result of that, this access to the area from East Rocks Road is now off the table. So what's being proposed is a trail system coming along Woods Pond and then into the interior of the lot at this high point. So you can kind of see some, I'm just going to zoom in, some of the topography. This area out here is wetland. You can see it starts to get, those contour lines are very spread out. It's very flat. This area is much more hilly. This is a high point. Majority of the trails are kind of wedged in this upper part, but then there is a loop trail that would be within the wetland itself, as well as the initial access from Woods Pond.
What are we working from to know where the wetland is and isn't?
And so then I'm going to
It's
Sorry.
all wetland.
try to put another map up, which I didn't save in the right place. Hold on a second.
I have that available, if I would share.
And
Can I ask a quick question while you're looking for that?
yes.
So I'm very familiar with this place because it's not far from me and I like birds. I was there the other day and there is already work being done. So I guess where's the delineation of, I don't know. I'm curious as to what is being done currently because I saw everybody there and everything happening.
Yep.
And what the distinction is from what we're talking about today.
So you're talking about the same thing. So
Okay.
I'm gonna just kind of finish talking about what's being requested, and then I'm going to switch to the I think the Rec and Parks Department and maybe their designer are best to answer kind of the amount of activity that's gone on so far.
Okay. Thanks. I was just stalling for you.
Thank you.
No problem.
So this is the GIS map. So wetlands on this map are for planning purposes only, but they're so it's not a survey quality, but it's a relatively accurate depiction of wetlands. So on this property, the wetlands were taken from the inland wetland permit application back when the developer owned it. And so that's what these within the property line, this solid green line is. And then underlain to that is the proposed activities, for the most part, of the proposed trail. So the trail is approximately here. And then there's a spur here. So it's this light gray line that comes out down to Woods Pond. The wetlands on the Woods Pond property have never been field delineated by wetland scientists. So these were added historically. We keep track of field observed wetlands. So that was probably me a long time ago. So maybe, I guess at this point, maybe switch to if either I think we have Ken Hughes from the Department of Rec and Parks or Mr. Chris who's from the Divine. Maybe you guys can just explain the background of the trail, and if you could talk about the changes that you put in your narrative that came with the declaratory ruling that would deviate from the plan that I'm showing on the screen, and then explain the amount of work and what's been done out at the site so far.
Sure, I can start. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Thank you for your time. My name is Ken Hughes. I am the Superintendent of Parks and Public Property for the City of Norwalk. As Alexis alluded to, about a year ago, we did receive some grant funding for trail systems within the City of Norwalk. And we also, came off our recent completion of our master plan of Parks and Recreation. And one of the number one items within that plan was more trails as requested by the residents. So, we did search through city-owned property. We had meetings with the mayor and those above me. and these properties came across our desk and seemed like the perfect fit. So we applied the money through the state, and we, hired Chris Trimatola from Alloy Designs to start working on the design process for a trail system within this property. Throughout the course of the last year, we did have 2 meetings with the residents. We actually sent a letter to the property owners abutting the property. One of the meetings we had at the senior center, and we did receive some valuable feedback. So we tweaked the design based on that meeting. And then we had a second meeting at City Hall, where once again we mailed the abutting property owners. So some of the changes to this design that you don't see here, because obviously we changed them. So the initial design included work within the floodplain. So after meeting with Alexis and the neighbors, we realized that was a bad idea. So we pulled the trail out of the floodplain, and we also had several other access points to the site. One which you can see on East Rocks Road, which was removed. One was on Burlington Court, which was removed. And we also had a small parking area along East Rocks Road. So those were all taken out of the plan based on, the feedback from the residents and also from Alexis. So currently, you see before you the proposed trail system. We are no longer going to do any grading within the wetlands area. And we did have an original plan to do a wood chip surface on the trails. And we have taken that out within the wetland area as well. There is a single pedestrian bridge that we're proposing in the plan. If you can see the river, it's a small little brook there you go, on the top right of the photo. The pedestrian bridge was designed to be carried in piece by piece, so we wouldn't need any equipment to install the bridge. And all the abutment work is going to be hand dug, so we're not going to bring any concrete trucks or machines to do the digging within the wetlands. So we also worked with the state of Connecticut. We filed the application with the Natural Diversity Database. So I do have permission from the DEP. They're well aware of this project, and they did receive, some questioning phone calls, and they send all the phone calls down, back to us. I did walk the site with Alexis a few months ago, and we did hold several meetings within her office, reviewing the plans and see what, the best way to design the trail. We do have Chris here from Alloy Designs. He'll do a very brief presentation on the layout of the trail. And I will speak on the work starting. So we did hire a contractor who was mobilized, and he started working within the site. So the trail that you can see along Woods Pond is actually existing. That's an existing pedestrian trail. We didn't install it. I think it's just a foot trail from people using it. So once I realized we're going to be within the wetland area, I talked to Alexis, and we actually pulled the contractor off the site until we can come before this commission. So that's where we are now. And I'll have Chris, go through his presentation, and then we can open it up again to questions or other comments or concerns.
I do want to just make one correction about the floodplain and floodway. You're still in the floodplain, which is the wide area, and it pretty much mimics the wetland area. It actually extends a little bit further than the wetland area, but what you're outside of is the flood way, which is effectively the river, and that's kind of a portion along Woods Ponds.
Okay, my apologies. I'm sorry.
Within the brook. So you're still in the flood plain, but you're not proposing any activity that crosses the flood way. That was it. Yep.
Yeah, good evening. Name is Chris Trimatola. I'm the architect and landscape architect with Alloy Design Studio, and specifically on this, the landscape architect for the trail design. Alexis, could I share my screen quick?
Absolutely.
I just have a couple slides. I'll skip the slides that the information was already discussed, just to make it a little bit more confusing for everybody. I have north the opposite direction on this. So Woods Pond is to the right, not the left on here. As Ken mentioned, the trail from the parking lot up to the first intersection here is existing. This is how people who are accessing the site at the moment get into the site. There, from what we can tell from multiple site visits during the design process, there are people using the site and wandering around the site. What they're doing, I could take a couple guesses, but it's a little bit of an unknown. It looks mostly like teenagers. And so this plan would bring in a loop trail, wood chips where we're not within the floodway, and a brush, essentially a cleared path, dirt path where we are within the floodway with a single pedestrian bridge that is all dimensional lumber, thermally modified, that can be carried in by hand. The abutments for each side of the bridge would be hand dug for sonotube structures, and then a series of interspersed connections for those trails for obviously very passive recreation. This is from the aerial that you saw previously. This is a heavily wooded site, so this trail would also provide access for removal of large trees that come down, or access to the site for other needs. Where you see a lot of these contours here, many of these are piles of construction debris that were dumped here from previous generations, that this project also has some allocation to, where possible, to remove some of the more visually obtrusive debris that's left there. Some of it's simply covered over now, and we're not going to worry about it, but other pieces, there's quite large concrete slabs that are haphazardly throughout the site. And for the changes that we've made since having these meetings and addressing the floodway and wetland issue, is, as Ken mentioned, no grading or mulching within the floodway, the floodplain wetland area. That essentially mimics this portion of the site here. Hand digging only for the bridge abutments, and even within the remainder of this area, mulch trails, which is mostly chipped dead wood found on site, and some debris removal. As part of the project, we have some allocation of funds for tagging and removal of trees on site where we see any issue. Ken can speak to that maybe a little bit, but from my understanding, we have not found any of serious concern at the moment, only some already fallen trees that would be removed. And here you can see the formation essentially of a trail already in many locations on site, and this would simply be to clean that up. And this is obviously of the representation where we are mulching the trail.
I'm going to let some commissioners, if you're at a good spot, Chris, to take questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, sure. I wasn't paying attention. Who had their hand up first? Sorry.
Not me.
All right,
I think it was Devin.
Devin, go for it.
I think Catherine was in front of me, but
Oh, there you go.
so do you want me to go? I can go real quick. So, do you have a number of the down trees or any snags that potentially are coming down? I mean, they're an important habitat, even though they're not necessarily, they could be unsightly, but they're an
That was
important.
my question. So
Yes, so
I would caution that, if any of those that can be kept that aren't a hazard to the public would be preferable.
sure. Yes, so we walked the site probably about a week and a half ago, myself, Chris, and the contractor, with the intent to tag potential trees that need to come down. And we didn't see any trees that were in the way of the proposed trails. We did come across 3 hang-ups that are stuck in the canopy of another tree that are actually a danger to anybody using the site, trail or no trail. And I believe there were 6 or so logs across the trail we're not going to remove the entire log. We'll just cut the section to pass the trail through. You know, and I'm a licensed arborist. We have another licensed arborist on staff with the city. So we're working, you know, we would be working closely with the contractor with the canopy and the trees. As you know, the urban forest is a big thing with the city of Norwalk. We're aware of that. You know, and we'll treat the site accordingly.
And Ken, just to follow up on that point, the trees that are hung up on other canopy trees could be a risk to those other trees as well. So it's a I'm assuming Ken and your team, you'll be doing the standard forest management practices for. Yeah.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Catherine?
Yeah, I also have the same thoughts and on the deadwood and the benefits. Another question is just in terms of thinking through on the trails, the access issues. So what is the city's plan around people bringing pets or dogs on the trails system, bikes, and are there requirements for making parts, any or all of the trails handicap accessible? And
Sure.
understanding how that plays into the planning.
Yep. So this was designed as a pedestrian trail. So we're not going to allow bikes or any type of motorized vehicles. Currently throughout the city of Norwalk, there are no dogs allowed on any city property except for, Taylor Farm, the new dog park in Oyster Shell, and then of course portions of Cranberry Park. I'm sorry, yes, portions of Cranberry Park. And as of right now, that's not on anybody's radar to change. If that changes in the future, that'll be something discussed, obviously, with the city council. And then in terms of ADA, so we have an ADA coordinator who works for the city of Norwalk. So I did meet with Bill in regards to this, and based on the grading needed and the rockiness of the terrain, this won't be able to be made 100% ADA accessible. That being said, we are working on trail plans up at Cranberry Park at the moment where we will have a 100% ADA accessible trail.
That's good for you, Catherine? Okay, Ms. Breslin.
One other thing,
sorry,
if I could just add really quick,
please.
I'm sorry.
No.
We are going to add 73 native shrubs to the site as well as 49 native trees. So that's included in our planting plan with these trails.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will get this in quick. I know I have to be quick here. First of all, thank you, because I very much appreciate this. When you say there are teenagers there, you don't know who's there. It's me sneaking through the woods looking for birds. And it is precarious and it is pretty gross right now.
Yeah.
There is so much trash and but my question to you is through the wetlands. I know you said outside of the wetlands that you would be using mulch. But my question is that part of that path goes through very, very, very muddy areas right now. Is there any plan to address that? Are there any elevated pathways or something? I don't know what the options are, but I can see that pathway just becoming a mess if it's not somehow addressed.
Yeah. Chris, did you want to speak briefly just about the grading outside of the wetlands?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So each of the trails, the section outside the wetland area, the trail section detail is slightly elevated from its surroundings. We're not building up the earth tremendously, but we have about 6 to 8 inch difference between trail height and surrounding height.
Okay.
So essentially, instead of digging into the landscape, and this was part of an ecological concern as well, instead of digging into the land to create a coplanar trail, we're essentially buffering the sides and tapering the sides of the trail and building the trail on top of the existing ground. So which would give that some elevation to one, consistently dry out and stay stabilized, but also not negatively impact the root structures of the various plants that are existing there.
Okay. You said that's outside the wetland. I guess my question is delineation, because a lot of that to me was still like right out, near the pond and everything. I don't know how much has it been delineated? Alexis, you said that it
The wetland at Woods Pond has not. The wetlands within the bulk of the property, the Crossland property, was about 20 3 years ago.
Okay. And is there any plan to do because if Woods Pond, none of that is delineated, is there any plan to have that delineated? It goes into each other, right? That's the entrance, the access point is, I think.
It runs along Woods Pond, yeah. And so
Yes.
just so you know, and the Rec and Parks Department has a current request for funding in the upcoming capital budget to do some study work and basically study for Woods Pond. To
Okay.
basically see what's needed to clean that pond up, to get rid of some invasives, to possibly dredge the pond. So I think this is going to bring a lot of attention to this site, which is a good thing because it needs it. And I think it's a beautiful piece of property, and I think it's a gem for all residents to enjoy, to be honest with you.
Agreed. Okay, we have to move over to the public
sorry.
hearing.
Right. So the access along Woods Pond is most likely wetlands. It's never been field delineated.
Yes, exactly. That's I guess where I'm curious about too. So, okay.
But I think we'll have to circle back. So there is a public hearing scheduled to begin at 7 p.m., which unfortunately for you, Ken and Chris, mean that they're going to pause your discussion, go to public hearing, and then they'll continue on their regular programming after the public hearing.
Well, on that note, I mean, Ken and Chris, could you possibly, I mean, if you don't want to hang around, which it's totally up to you, you could touch base with Alexis. I think that last part is the only thing that really concerns me at all about, the wetness of that trail in. And if you wanted to come back in a couple of weeks with just feedback on that, I didn't hear any other notable objections. So we can either put a pin in it tonight and come back to it tonight, or we can put a pin in it tonight and come back to it in 2 weeks. It's entirely up to you.
I don't mind staying on. I mean, Chris, you don't have to stay, Chris, but I can stick around.
I'm going to hop over to put my kids to bed, but I'll be available in an hour. So.
Okay, well, there you go. Feel free to hop back on if
Yep.
we'll probably still be here.
Sounds good.
Okay. So
And
on that note,
I just want to note that I know that earlier when we were talking about 6 Singing Woods or 4 Singing Woods, and currently now there's an multiple attendees that have raised their hands, and unfortunately we can't accept public comment regarding a pending matter unless there's a public hearing scheduled.
thank you for making that clear. Okay, are we ready to switch gears back to public hearing for 825-069? I think, don't we have to do roll call and all that stuff, Alexis?
Yes, please.
Wait,
We'll
don't you-
begin.
you do-
Clacky.
Okay.
Okay. If you want to go ahead and officially open the public hearing for the application, I'll take the roll call.
So at 7:03, we're going to officially open the public hearing for 825-069 Longshore Avenue, Manresa Osprey LLC.
All right. Roll call. Commissioner Clacky,
Here.
Knight,
Here.
Bennett,
Here.
Alum,
Alum.
Here.
Alum. You know,
Thank you. But yes, that's okay, Alexis. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
Thank you. In here.
Alum. Okay. Healy,
Here.
I can learn. Breslin.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So this is a public hearing on an application to amend the inland wetland map. Public hearing was noticed in the Norwalk Hour twice, the 2 Thursdays prior to tonight, advertising that the public hearing would be held this evening via Zoom. That's all I have for announcements. So just to go over real quickly the process for a public hearing, the applicant typically makes a presentation and explains the background and their proposed petition. Then and commissioners can ask the applicant questions at any time. Once the applicant has finished their presentation, we'll move to the public comment period. You can use the raise your hand feature to speak. We'll call you in the order that your hand is raised. The public hearing is held so that in addition to the written and verbal testimony that the applicant has given the agency members will take additional spoken or written comment from the public in order for them to use in making their final determination. A public hearing is not a back and forth conversation. It's an opportunity for the public to state any comments. You can certainly ask questions, but the applicant isn't obligated, but they're always encouraged to answer them. But they will answer them at the very end of the public hearing once the public comment has ended. So you have one chance to speak, and you won't be invited back tonight. And then once public comment is over, the applicant has a chance to do a final presentation and potentially abut any comments that are made. That covers it.
Can I throw one more thing in there?
Please.
We try whenever we can to limit the comments to how they apply to this commission or to the Inland Wetland Agency. So that'd be my request for anyone who wants to speak from the public, that we keep comments focused on what we are actually able to control and what's under our purview. Things about zoning and, I don't know, affordability or all these things that is not under our control, not under our purview, yeah, I'd prefer to avoid spending time on that if we could. So, that said, Alexis, do we have like oh, actually, we probably want to let Ms. Suchi and her team present. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Conservation Commission. First of all, Happy New Year to everyone, and thank you for giving us the time tonight to present this petition to amend the wetlands map, the City of Norwalk. For the record, my name is Liz Suchi. I'm a partner at Carmody, Torrance, Sandeck, and Hennessy, and I, along with my colleague Vin Demore, who is on tonight, we represent Manresa Osprey LLC, which is the owner of the 120-acre Manresa Island land and is the applicant before you tonight. It is my privilege to appear before you today to present the first of what will be many applications required for the transformation of Manresa Island into Manresa Wilds, a privately owned public park. As you know, this endeavor has come to the city thanks to the generosity and vision of Austin and Allison McCord. Manresa Wilds, once completed, will provide access to open space and to the Long Island Sound waterfront, along with offering educational and recreational activities and so much more. So without further ado, why don't we get started? As I mentioned, before you is a petition to amend the wetlands mapping, which was filed September 25th with this commission. We're not before you to present the Manresa Wilds project in total or in depth, other than to provide you with some information about the project as we move forward so you can get a better sense of what it's all about as it relates to this petition. Many applications will need to be filed for both the North Forest and have been filed, and also for the Manresa Wilds project in total. But the purpose tonight is really rather limited, as is your jurisdiction, as evidenced by Chairman Clocky. It is simply the petition to amend the wetlands map. You may recall a presentation that we made to you back in November, very brief. And during that presentation, you asked us to provide additional information, clarifying documents due to the questions you had, and the somewhat unusual aspect of a petition to amend the wetlands map, which you don't see that frequently. We provided that documentation. It should be in the file on December 18th. We notified neighbors within the certain distance of the property, as is required under the inland wetland regulations, of tonight's hearing by certificate of mailing on December 29th. And that certificate of mailing was returned to staff and is part of now your permanent file. Tonight, we present to you a very important and necessary petition to amend the wetland map and the files in the City of Norwalk Department of Conservation, which has been the result of 2 years of ecological assessments, along with enhancement and restoration plans by some of the most experienced scientists in the field. Before we begin, however, I'd like to introduce to you the team, many of whom you'll hear from tonight. And those team members are Jessica Vanashek, the Executive Director of Manresa Wilds, Chris Murphy, the Project Manager of Manresa Wilds, Doug Adams, another Project Manager, Manresa Wilds, Nicholas Parisi, a Project Engineer and Landscape Architect with eDesign Dynamics, who has nearly a decade of experience in habitat restoration and design and ecological master planning. Elsa Lohman, another professional engineer with eDesign Dynamics, who has more than 20 years of experience in habitat restoration, flood mitigation, and resilience. Also present tonight is Michelle Ford. She is a principal at EcoMaps and is a certified soil scientist, certified wetland scientist, and wetlands biologist with more than 20 years of experience in wetland delineation in Connecticut and elsewhere. Kevin McCutcheon, a professional engineer of Ty and Bond, is present, as is Colleen Uhas, landscape architect of Scape. I provide all this information to you so that when you move forward, you can make a determination, I hope, that all of them are experts based upon their education and experience, and that you will qualify them as such. So who are we and why are we here? As indicated, the owner of the property is Manresa Osprey LLC. The location of the property is on Longshore Avenue at the end of Woodward Avenue. It is bordered by Longshore Avenue to the north, residentially developed properties, and Long Island Sound to the east, and Long Island South to the south, Long Island Sound, to the south, and tidal wetlands to the south as well. For those of you who don't know, Manresa Island, since its ownership many, many years ago and used as a retreat by the Jesuits up until the 1940s, in fact, its name is derived from a place in Spain, Manresa, where St. Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuit order, had profound spiritual experiences. The property is District 5, Block 86, Lots 1 and 2, and it is currently zoned CD1S. Can we pull up the map? Someone would be kind enough to do that for me. That would be great. And as we're doing that, the lot size, as mentioned before, is 120 acres. There are multiple structures on the property. When it was used as a former coal-fired, then oil-powered electricity generating facility, which facility was operational from the late 1950s to about 2013. So at this point, that is a very brief overview of why we're before you. This application has been filed under section 60A-3B and 60A-15 of the Inland Wetlands Regulations. But at this point, I think it would be helpful if Chris Murphy could come on and give some brief background about the property, and he'll be followed by Jessica Vanashek. And thereafter, we'll get into the very specific and technical analyses and observations of the property that gave rise to this application and which we hope you will be able to upon which you can base your decision. So Chris?
Yeah, actually, Liz, this is Doug. I'm going to speak really briefly and then turn it over to Chris. Okay. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners and members of the Norwalk community. My name is Doug Adams, and I'm here tonight as the Director of Entitlements of the Manresa Island Corporation, working towards the creation of Manresa Wilds Park. I am personally very excited to work on this park. Our mission is to inspire engagement with the waterfront through public access, education, restoration, and research. Specifically, we are here to discuss, as Liz said, the first step in approvals to create the first phase of Manresa Wilds, the 28-acre North Forest. Fenced off for decades, this is a unique opportunity to reconnect the community to Long Island Sound, and pending local and state approvals, the North Forest could open as soon as spring of 2027. Over the last year, more than 2,500 residents have weighed in on their priorities. People consistently asked for natural space, access to the shoreline, and a passive recreation. The design reflects that input with trails and small clearings that create 3 flexible pockets for learning and quiet enjoyment. The North Forest sits on land shaped by decades of disposed coal ash that requires targeted remediation to make the area safe for people and wildlife. Ecological restoration is at the core of creating the North Forest and key to welcoming Norwalkers safely back to the site and ensuring its long-term resilience. I'll turn it over to Chris, who's the head of design and construction, to speak about the site in more detail. Chris?
Hey everybody, good to see you all again. This is our project overview, got the Manresa Wilds logo and identity for the new publicly accessible park we're looking to develop. Scape, who's on the call, Big, who's designing the rehabilitation of the power plant building. And then the rest of the team that's supporting us, including Ty and Bond and eDesign that are here on the call as well. Next slide. To Doug's point about the expansion and growth of this existing, much smaller 25-acre landmass through the extensive, significant coal ash fill that's developed the remaining or the additional 100 acres that's made up our site. The history of this place goes back from 1934 all the way up to today, and the purchase of the island and the generous commitment from Alston and Allison McCord to convert it into a publicly accessible park. So looking at the site history and context, the evolution is a big part in what we as a design investigation team have done over the last 9 months since I joined the team, which is to really study the existing site conditions to allow us to design the restoration and ecological enhancement, as well as sea level resiliency for the entire park. So understanding what was there and what has led to the creation of the larger landmass that we are developing as part of Manresa Wilds has been key to understanding how to adapt and react to the existing conditions and how best to design our interventions for the island as part of building this park. So next slide. As well as now in this same site history extent of fill growth map that shows the original yellow landmass in the upper left, 1935, expanding over time to create Manresa Island as we know it today. We have the two red outlined Wetland 1 and Wetland 2 designated on the conservation map that we are looking to amend, and just showing the commission and the public how it really is, it's been quite the story arc of the creation of those even land masses as they exist today. And as part of the history and the, I'll pass it off to the technical experts that have really done the analysis of what there is today and why we're here today. But this is a helpful story of the creation of those formerly wetlands that we're looking here today. Next slide. Please, Nick. Thank you. Before I kick it off to the technical experts that have done the site investigation and are helping us design the eventual park, I just want to say that this is just, an important part of hoping to clear up some existing characteristics, conditions, classifications on site that we've found to be, that have just been part of our, study of the site towards moving forward into the actual design and construction of the park. So you can see we've thought through the master planning vision of the island, from the northern forest to the new beachfront that we want to build on the south, connecting Norwalk Public to the shore, to the Sound, the lawn, the Berth Marina Harbor, the play. We have a big grand vision of impact and benefit to this community that we're looking to put out there. And I'm going to pause there because we're not here for the master planning vision, but we just, we're looking to tell a big story here. And this is just the first step of many years to come for this project. Phase 1 North Forest Blue is in for permit under separate process. And then, this project team is going to work on designing and building out the rest of the phase 2. And I see a hand, but I think we can hand it off, Liz.
Before we hand off to Michelle Ford, I see Commissioner Knight. You may have a question.
Yeah, I just have a question on thank you for putting together the presentation and for the vision, and this is a massive restoration on multiple level project. So, we really appreciate the effort and the intention of this. On the master plan, I just have a question in terms of understanding the overlay of the areas that you're looking to declassify as wetlands. I
Sure.
understand, like in the far, I guess, northeast corner, northwest corner.
Yeah.
That area is quite clear. I just want to understand, is the area 2 then being proposed to become a cedar swamp.
Freshwater cedar swamp.
So it's just kind of
Not,
curious that we would
if I may
be
add, not the area in the northwest to the far northwest, which was formerly known as Wetland 1, but rather the area
Wetland
you
2.
can see on your screen right now in the Middle East, where it's shown with some dappled green and blue. That's the area in which we're proposing the cedar swamp.
Yeah, so it's kind of like we're taking it off so it's not delineated as wetland, but then we're restoring it as a wetland. So I guess that's kind of the question that I have, like, well, then it's going to be restored to being a wetland, right?
Commissioner Knight, if I may, if we could get through some of the still overview comments and analyses, I think some of your questions may be answered. So if you wouldn't mind letting us just proceed, and then we'll certainly get back to you with those answers, but they may be answered as part of the presentation. Would that be okay? Great. So you touched upon why are we here? We are here because various documents in the cities filed over the years have identified areas in this North Forest Phase 1 and below that as wetlands. And what we are proposing to have you consider is that based upon most recent site analysis and field investigations, that those areas do not qualify under state statute as wetlands. As a matter of fact, two of the areas don't even appear on the city's wetlands mapping. But in an effort to be transparent, to be prudent, and to be cautious, we submitted this application to accurately identify those areas that are in the wetlands and over which you exercise jurisdiction and control, and over which we are obligated to abide by inland wetland regulations and submit applications to you where necessary. And that will help us guide our redevelopment efforts in a complete, thorough, and accurate manner. So as I mentioned earlier, the design professionals have been assessing this property and its condition for nearly 2 years. And as part of this, they've reviewed the documents in the file in the Conservation Office. And as a result of field inspections and subsequent analyses, we filed this petition to declassify 2 areas. One is near the entrance, Longshore Avenue, as was just described, and another is an interior pocket that has also just been described. And we've asked for this declassification since these areas are, quote, devoid of sustained hydraulic inputs, which is important, and also that neither area meet the criteria for jurisdictional wetlands as defined by the Connecticut General Statutes. With that as just a background overlay, I'd like to have Michelle Ford explain to you what she has analyzed, how she's analyzed it, and what her conclusions are.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, everyone. So Commissioner Knight, to your point, so I was retained to delineate wetlands at the site, and that's really what I did. It wasn't to look at the master plan. It wasn't to consider future context. It was to go to the site and delineate regulated wetlands. And so hopefully that answers your question a little bit in terms of, why go through this effort if you're just going to restore it to a wetland. And it's kind of, that's an aside. That's more of a regulatory question, but really my task was to delineate regulated wetlands, and that's what I did. So now I'll just go through, I know we've been through this before, but just since this is a public hearing, I'll go through it again, just so that we can have a brief overview and discussion on, what is a wetland in Connecticut? A wetland can be 2 things. It can be a wetland regulated by the state, which is thereby regulated by this commission, or it can be a wetland regulated by the federal government, or both. So right now we'll focus on wetland determination criteria for just Connecticut, which is the purview of this commission. So in Connecticut, wetlands are defined, inland wetlands rather, are defined by their soils: poorly drained, very poorly drained, alluvial soils, and floodplain soils. NRCS maps soils, and they'll map wetland soils. Now these are typically native soils and native soil conditions. And what we see here for Manresa is interesting is that it's all mapped as eudorthans. And eudorthans is essentially human altered soils, which is exactly what we saw on those historic aerials that show that Manresa has been filled for decades and decades and decades. So we're not dealing with native soils as we would on most sites. This one is very unique in that it is all filled and it is all coal ash. However, since that filling and over time, native soils have begun to develop as the area has become forested and naturalized. But again, we're not dealing with natural soils, and that's why it's mapped as eudorthans. because of these disturbed conditions, a soils only approach is challenging, right? Trying to look at soils when you don't have the real soils to look at. So recognizing that was one consideration. Part of that consideration is referring to guidance on, how the state regulates human transported material and eudorphins. And then the 2025 delineation, I used supplemental indicators, and we'll get into that in a couple of slides. But the important note for this slide is that in Connecticut, wetlands are soils only. So next slide, please. Now, when you look at the federal criteria, and this is regulated by U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, they look at 3 parameters to determine a wetland. So soils, very much the same as Connecticut, but also hydrology. Where's the water? In order to be a wetland, you have to have water at least at some points in the year, and that water must be persistent enough to alter the vegetation and the soils. So looking at hydrology and hydrologic indicators, high water table, saturation, is there algae? Is there, surface soil cracks? Is there a hydrogen sulfide odor? All of these things you can look at to say, hang on, something's telling me that water hangs out here long enough. Water stained leaves, another one. Think of a swamp that may dry up. Vernal pools, same thing. You have seasonal water versus permanent water. Either way, you have evidence of hydrology. And then we go into vegetation. And vegetation is classified based on their ability to survive or thrive in wet conditions. Obligate species, for instance, 99% of the time, they only occur in wetlands. They need water, they need wet roots. On the opposite of that, we have upland plants that occur in uplands. They don't want wet roots. And then you have the facultative wetland, facultative, and facultative upland in between. All right, so again, the important message here, federal criteria looks at 3 different things. So what do we do? Next slide, please. So for a site like Manresa, it's challenging because it is disturbed. It's not native soils, it's not native forest. And so for me, as a professional wetland scientist and soil scientist, a lot of this is context. And so I have to understand what's happened at the site, why has it happened, when did it happen, and what information do we have that I can use to support my delineation. So going out to the field is one thing, but before I even go out into the field, I review existing data. I look at historic and present aerial imagery, going back as far as I can to see what's happened, what's changed over time. I look at previous wetland delineations and mapping and the reports. What did other soil scientists say? I look at the town mapping. I also look at LIDAR and elevation and contour data, which is really helpful. And that was flown in 2023, and that shows the contours at the site. And you can also look at that as it changes over time. I look at NRCS soil mapping. What does NRCS map this as? And that again gets back into that human material, that eudorphins. And then when I'm out in the field, taking all of that, even before you go out, I start to look at, okay, obviously soils, but what's driving me to look into those areas and look into the soils? You can't dig every 10 feet. So you try to steer, where do I have water? Where do I have a pit? Where do I have a divot? Where did somebody delineate previously? But also, what's the vegetation telling me, right? You're going to look differently if you have a let's say, paper birch forest versus an area of cattails, right? So what's the vegetation saying? And what are those species classified as? Are they all obligate plants or are they all upland plants? I'm also looking for those indicators of hydrology. Do I have a stream here? Do I have, water stained leaves? Am I right next to a river? Am I right next to a stream where there could be floodplain? Where's that water coming from? And then it's also the application of context. It's also the application of timing. An area can look very different after the snow melt in April than it can in the drought of August or July, right? So understanding time of year, looking at the chronology of natural processes, again, going back to those aerial imageries, what has happened over time, right? One natural process that we've seen here too is forest succession. The last time some of these wetlands were delineated was 2007. So that's almost 20 years ago. A lot can change in 20 years. And so that's evident as well in the aerial photographs and what I saw in the field. So next slide, please. And this is just an example. We don't need to go through every single one, but Manresa has been evaluated for years, since 2004. There's probably studies prior to that, but these are some of the information I was provided and some of the delineations. So seeing, where were those delineations? What did the report say? Some are more complete than others, but again, the areas in question here, again, just so that we're clearing the record, were last visited in 2007. So again, almost 20 years ago. Next. And so here we go. This is our request, really. And again, these areas are not technically depicted on the town's map, but it's really to clear the record as we move forward through this site development. And we have that northwest corner, that W-1, formerly known as W1. And then we have W-2, or formerly known as W-2. Those are the two areas in question. When I went out in the field, I could not get them to meet the criteria. They did not meet the criteria to qualify as a wetland. And so in the next couple of slides, we'll discuss exactly why and what I found. Yep. So next slide, if you would. All right. So this area here is in that northwest corner that we were talking about. So the soils that were observed, non-native fill soils. Again, we have a lot of that coal ash kind of disturbed profile. I did see some relic hydric indicators. There was something in there that said, hey, water hangs out here, or it used to hang out here, which makes sense. It takes years, if not decades, for soils to change in the presence of water and persistence of water. But something just didn't really ring true because there weren't a lot of those other indicators to say, yes, this is still a wetland. Now, knowing this was formally flagged, that's kind of why I was looking at it. And honestly, I was expecting a much more well-defined and easily delineated wetland in this area, so it was puzzling. But as I started looking some more, there were no signs of hydrology. There's not much of a watershed that supports this area. No standing or flowing water, no water-stained leaves, no evidence of hydrology, no saturation, and really no discernible topographic gradient, which you would expect to find what was formerly there was more of a basin. Didn't see that in the field. And there's a picture afterward, and that may help to explain a little bit of this. Again, no streams, ditches, drainage channels, but really no evidence of hydrology. Vegetation, no obligate wetland species, no skunk cabbage, no cattails. And the area was really dominated by facultative plants. It was switchgrass, really, which can go either way. It can say like, yeah, I can be a little bit wet or I can be a little bit dry, but really kind of a neutral species. And then we did have some Phragmites, which is behaving interestingly across the site because you will find Phragmites on top of a 6-foot berm, which is problematic in that it's not really telling of wetland conditions. So, but again, there was an absence of obligate wetland plants. So it wasn't really telling me anything. There was nothing to lead me to think that this was a wetland and no boundary to be flagged. So based on this determination, I deemed that this was not truly a regulated wetland. And so next slide, please. And so here you'll see it, right? And this is all just that switchgrass meadow. Again, no basin, not a lot of species diversity, not a lot going on. It's just kind of a flat, open prairie area dominated by that facultative switchgrass. All right, so next slide. And so now going to the other wetland, this W2, this is an interesting one because it's surrounded by at least a 6-foot berm on all sides. And this was a former settling basin for some of the industrial wastewater. So they would, through their processes, dump water into this area. It would be retained there and then, discharged offsite. I'm not exactly sure on the processes, but again, we have an area that is man-made that was bermed. So when it's bermed, there's no opportunity for hydrology other than either a high groundwater table or rainwater. But again, looking at the soils, all disturbed, all fill, ash, coal ash. They exhibit some historic indicators in certain areas, but again, this was a dewatering area. This is a man-made area that they used to intentionally put wastewater into. The coal ash and other fill materials, they affect soil chemistry, but again, that's really what I was seeing. No clear indications of hydric soils, no glade matrix, nothing like that. Again, no signs of hydrology, water-stained leaves, drainage patterns, no streams, water courses, nothing that indicates that water hangs out in this area. I'm not sure where the groundwater table is here, but there was also no influence that the groundwater table is elevated to a point where it would impact conditions, again, making it more of a wetland. And that was also evident in the vegetation that was there. No obligate wetland species, dominated by Phragmites, same as the other areas, but again, that Phragmites goes up on top of that 6-foot berm, which is well within an upland and throughout the site. In addition, there were many facultative upland plants too. Blackberry and thistle, those are plants that really prefer to be in an upland. So those are commingled. But again, going back to it, just really nothing that said this is really a wetland, especially in those problematic soils. All right, so next slide. And so this is an example of one of the soil pits here, and you can see that material that was coming out, and it looks like it's a nice organic soil, but it's really not. It's just that old coal ash. And what I was hoping to get to, as you can see, I was, nearly 3 feet down with my auger, is a nice glade matrix that you would see in areas where you have a persistent, hydrology that's changing the soils. But again, nothing throughout here. And the photo on the right you have is that Allegheny blackberry, which is a facultative upland plant growing right, throughout in scattered places throughout this former wetland area. All right, so next slide. And so this is just an example here of some of the Phragmites that's growing. And it's also looking at the growth characteristics of it too. It was fairly skinny, fairly sparse, not really dense, mature, kind of healthy stands like I found in some of the other wetlands that I flagged on site. And you can see it too growing in some of the uplands and again, right against those upland birch trees right there. So that's where vegetation can be misleading. And so you want to pay attention to that. That's just an example of what we saw with the Phragmites out there. Next slide.
And I'll just give a quick overview as this connects to the context that Chris and the rest of the team has described. So as a broad stroke for the ecological restoration vision for the site, our overarching goal for this proposed ecological restoration at Manresa is to elevate the site, which currently functions as a post-industrial coastal woodland, to a future-forward resilient forest ecosystem. The design intent of the ecological restoration in these areas that we've discussed tonight is to set the foundations for this ecological uplift that we are proposing. Our goal is to strengthen each of the strata within the existing ecology and the existing ecosystem, starting with the ground plane, moving up through the subcanopy and canopy, increasing native biodiversity through species richness, and targeting regions where the historic human activities have given rise to opportunistic, non-native, and invasive species, as Michelle had just detailed. This overall, threatens the system's functions and values. So as described in the former Wetland 1 in the northwest corner, the team's vision is focused on the preservation of existing high-value native grasses that we've identified over 2 years of field investigations. And we would like to target the removal of the invasive common reed species, Japanese stiltgrass, and other non-native and invasive species, as well as include supplemental plantings of wet adaptive, hardy native grasses and pollinator species, understanding the potential shifts due to climate change. In the region that we just spoke of, former Wetland 2, the team's approach focuses on the creation of an Atlantic cedar forested wetland, which is a Connecticut state listed critical habitat. This would transform the existing isolated area, which is currently dominated by many non-native and invasive species, into a unique ecosystem with an emphasis on community stewardship and ecological education. And that's where we'd like to leave for now, just a broad connection to our vision, and I believe I'll turn it back over to Liz or the commission.
If I may, real quick, Liz, just so the commission's aware, there were additional wetlands that I flagged on site. There were 2 additional freshwater wetlands, and then an additional 2 tidal wetlands as well. So, thanks.
So that at this point concludes our just presentation to you at this stage. We're certainly happy, Commissioner Knight or any others, to answer any questions. I'm not sure if I think that answered your question, but if it didn't, we're certainly happy to further clarify and answer any questions you may have, and then look forward to public comment. And after public comment, we'll certainly respond to comments and summarize. Do you have any questions of either Melissa or Nick or Chris or Doug at this point?
Liz, did you just call me Melissa?
I'm sorry, Michelle. Pardon me. I'm sorry.
Sounds like we're ready to move on, Alexis. And
if members of the public would like to speak, please use the raise your hand function, and we will call on you. So I'll announce your name. I'll allow you to speak. If you could just start with clearly stating your name, so that our minute taker can take down who you are accurately. So the first is Kevin Hobson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Kevin Hobson, and I live at 9 Outer Road across the marsh from Manresa Island. And I have three concerns about the application. So number one is the timing of the survey. The applicant's wetland assessment was conducted over 3 days at the end of April 2025, which was an unusually dry month. According to the National Weather Service, Fairfield County received less than 60% of its normal April rainfall in April of last year. And the U.S. Drought Monitor showed that Connecticut was experiencing abnormally dry conditions that had persisted since the previous fall. And a dry spell should not be mistaken for a dry site. And a 3-day visit at the end of an unusually dry period can't tell the whole story. So I think before declassifying 5 acres of wetland, the commission should have observations from a range of conditions, not just the end of a single dry month. Number two is that the evidence for the declassification is far less rigorous than what was submitted for the keep evidence. The standardized Army Corps of Engineers wetland determination data forms that document the 3 factors that define a wetland: soil type, vegetation, hydrology. For the inland wetland areas that the applicant agrees should remain inland wetlands, which is less than 1 acre, the EcoMaps report includes these detailed data forms in attachment D. You can see the soil descriptions, plant lists, hydrology indicators, all documented in that standard format. But for the 5 acres that they want to declassify, the areas presumptively referred to as former W1 and former W2, there are no such data forms. So the report provides only a narrative description. And the burden of proof for any map amendment lies with the applicant. So given the fact that the 2016 survey documented these same areas as 5.88 acres of wetlands less than a decade ago, why should the applicant not be expected to provide the same level of documentation for the areas that to be declassified? And number three is, I guess, the bigger picture. In 2010 and 2016, Shaw and CB&I documented the 6.78 acres of inland wetlands on the site. 9 years later, EcoMap says only 0.90 acres remain. So if this petition is approved, the vast majority of what is currently considered inland wetland on Manresa Island will lose the wetland regulatory protections ahead of the impending development. And so how to explain a difference that dramatic, just 1/7 of the inland wetlands remaining? Either the 2016 survey was wrong or the conditions have changed. If the 2016 survey was flawed, what specifically was wrong with it? And if conditions have changed, what changed them? The filling that disrupted these wetlands happened decades ago, and nothing significant has changed in the last 9 years. The prior surveys were conducted as part of ongoing site remediation, and not to support any particular outcome. This 2025 study was commissioned by the applicant seeking declassification for development. That doesn't make it wrong, but when 2 professional surveys differ by 7x, and one was paid for by the party who benefits from the findings, the public interest, I think, is best served by some form of independent verification. So, commissioners, I'm asking for 3 things. 1, site observations during normal conditions, not just during a dry spell. 2, equal documentation, standardized data for the areas being declassified, not just narrative. And 3, an independent review to understand why the surveys differ so dramatically, and to verify the findings of the study paid for by the applicant. Once these wetlands are declassified, that decision seems very likely to become permanent in short order. And so please just make sure that you have the information you need before making this important decision. Thank you.
Fantastic comments. And Michelle, unfortunately, we're not going to be responding on a case-by-case basis until the very end of the public's comment. Thanks for raising your hand, though. Okay.
All right, next is Linnell's iPad.
Oh, hi. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Linnell Jones and my address is 10 Point Road. My husband and I moved to Wilson Point, the peninsula south of Manresa Island, in 1986. During the 90s, we also owned 8 Point Road and 2.5 Nathan Hale. After owning these other properties for a decade, we sold them due to flooding issues. I have firsthand knowledge of stormwater, wetlands, and drainage following intense rainfalls, high tides, and high winds. Maybe given the challenges Norwalk faces, the state faces, the country faces, reclassifying wetlands is no big deal. But if this decision is the beginning of approvals required to increase building density and the risk of human lives in the coastal flood zone, then this decision really matters for future Norwalk taxpayers. Over the past decades, storm and wind intensity has increased, high tides have risen, and flooding has not only closed roads, but the main entry to Wilson Point, making it impossible for emergency vehicles, any vehicle, to get to 80+ private homes. This is the same situation for Manresa Island and other waterfront South Norwalk neighborhoods. Whatever you believe about climate change, floods are acts of God. Flood losses are acts of man. Less than a foot of moving water can knock over the most athletic person, and 2 to 3 feet of moving water can overtake a car. Protecting any and all wetlands, particularly land previously designated wetlands, is law for a reason. Wetlands are mapped so those filled in, whether by man or nature itself, can be identified and restored, not reclassified. Section 22A 92B2F of the Connecticut Coastal Management Act states that municipalities manage coastal hazard areas so as to ensure that development proceeds in such a manner that hazards to life and property are minimized. Connecticut State Flood Management Act, sections 2568B to 2568O, prohibit state money to be used for development within a floodplain and requires measures to lessen risks to life, health, and property from floods. We all know the generous offer by the McCords, Wilson Point residents, has captured the attention from the governor of Connecticut, lots of politicians, and already gained global recognition. Who wouldn't want all the free stuff promised? Every single article reads as if all approvals exist. The only permit issued to date, the stewardship permit, which was never going to be denied because it identifies the steward, not how the remediation will be done, was sent to every leading politician in state government. Power and private funding may be why there has been no referral for independent Harbor Commission and Shellfish Commission review. Again, it isn't a matter of if, but when. Storms, wind, rising water destroy property and threaten lives. There should be no need to reclassify wetlands if this really is a resilient plan. Thank you.
Next up is Diane Lauricello.
Good evening, Chair Clocky and the commissioners. Good to see Doug Adams. Haven't seen him in a while since the mall. Anyway, for the record, my name is Diane Lauricella, 21 Little Fox Lane in West Norwalk. My comments are going to be quite brief because I was very appreciative of Kevin Hobson's determinations. I used to actually live at 9 Outer Road many, many years ago, so that's quite interesting that he has spoken tonight. My main concerns are the following. I am quite aware, being an environmental waste management professional, of the years and years of fill of the most of the what we currently know as Manresa Island. And I do understand and appreciate, and I actually thought it was quite a very good presentation by Michelle Ford, on different types of wetlands and the different ways that they are designated, both as a state by state and then by federal standards. My main question is this: has the commission, especially since you have had time, since it initially was proposed, have you had an independent review to clarify the conditions of the soil and compare and contrast why, as presented, a professional soil survey company came in and had such a different result? It would behoove this commission and its staff to have an independent review of a qualified soil scientist to compare and contrast why the 2016 survey is so different from the survey presented by Ms. Ford. That is your role and your job. I will say also that I have gone to many of the Manresa Wilds plans, and I do support some level of redevelopment of that site, and I look forward to the balanced approach that is planned. However, in the case of this particular request by Ms. Suchi and the team, I believe it is the commission and their staffs must and should ask for an independent review. I also wanted to know what the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection's viewpoint was, and if it was requested as a referral, and also for CERCA, the Connecticut, out in Eastern Connecticut, CERCA, the climate group that gives out and will do surveys for free on behalf of our cities and towns. And if not, why not? I lastly just wanted to say a concern with contamination, and it may or may not be germane to this particular request, is because W-2 was used for the removal or the minimal treatments of wastewaters that were conducted over the years in an industrial site. Is there a plan to first remediate that area, or is there a plan to remediate the area, whether or not it is reclassified or declassified? Thank you for this evening, and I appreciate listening for answers.
And if anyone else would like to speak, please use the raise your hand feature. Now is the time to do that. Chairman. Oh, so next is Dave Lindsay. Okay. Dave, you should be able to speak.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you to the commission and all the attendees this evening, and those others who have spoken before me. Just have a very quick comment. And I wanted to follow up on something that one of the speakers has already mentioned about the publicity and the seemingly universal optimism regarding this project. I just want to mention that there are many local residents who have grave reservations about this entire project. And I want to just make sure that that doesn't get lost in the shuffle when the Manresa team comes in with, about 10 experts, sort of overwhelming presence in a meeting like this. And I'm just hoping that the commission will be able to sort through and make sure that all the proper processes are followed and is doing the best job for the citizens of Norwalk. Thank you.
And then next is Diane Cece.
Good evening. Can you hear me? I'm having some technical problems. Again,
We
thank
can-
you. Good evening, everyone. And I think maybe the ENNA logo is up there, but I'm actually in as just Diane Cece resident. So I'm speaking on behalf of myself. And I'll be super brief. And first of all, Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you for serving. Also, hello to Doug Adams, your favorite non-mall person here. Good to see you. And I just want to say that ditto, and I second everything that the prior speaker said. I just want to go on the record. I listened to the entire presentation. I thank Ms. Ford for that thorough presentation. I certainly learned a lot this evening, but I share the same concerns and have the same questions as the prior speakers, and I'd just like that to be on the record. And thank you very much.
Okay,
That's
any-
37 Olmsted Place. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. Any other public comment? One more. Jeremiah Snee. Apologies. You should be able to speak. The person. Jeremiah, if you want to speak, you should be able to now.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just want to echo, my wife Margaret and I live at 26 Sable Street. And I just want to echo the concerns that were raised by, first thank all those who did the study, and we greatly appreciate the McCords and what they and their vision. I think there is grave concern across our neighborhood of Harbor Shores by some residents that is beyond the scope of tonight in terms of the North Forest. But I do agree that we really want to urge the commissioners to be very diligent. This is a very well-financed project and a very well-intentioned one. But there is grave concern about the limitations of the infrastructure around the facility. And there's also concern that the apparent intention of the McCord Group, MW, I call it MW, is that the impact of what is planned both here and more in the future outside of the gates is not as much of their concern, including the impact on taxes and services and so on. And Woodward Avenue is a very difficult road to navigate today, let alone in the future with greatly increased traffic and lots of parking spaces. So I won't go further because I understand I'm out of scope, but I do want to echo that this process needs to be very carefully considered apart from the PR and apart from the political support and other types of valid initiatives that can be undertaken by MW. And the concerns of the locals is very strong and broad. Thank you.
Last call for any public comment. So I don't see any hands raised. I think that potentially concludes the public comment period.
Okay.
No, one last taker, but then this is really the last. So if you do want to make any comment, raise your hand now, and we'll get to you. And then once we're done with this run, we'll move on. Melissa, you have the ability to speak.
You're muted, it looks like.
You are muted.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm just a little confused as to why we have to declassify things. I don't understand what the overall need is to do that, since there's no building on it. Could someone just explain that to me?
Melissa, I think we need your name and address, right, as well. Is that?
I'm so sorry. It's Melissa Machuska, and I live at 1 Longshore Avenue.
Thank you.
And we're gonna
That's all.
save responses for after everyone has spoken, or after everyone from the public has spoken. So yeah, we'll be sure to get that answered. Thank you.
Chairman, I think that's it.
Well, I'm just gonna give it 5 more seconds in case someone else sneaks in. Okay.
We have one more. Two more.
6 seconds, I mean.
Okay, Miss P. Burns. If you could just state your name.
Burns, 23 Sable. I have a question. One of the experts talked about forward thinking and resiliency in raising the grade. How high will the grade be raised? And what expectations do we have for potential flooding of the local neighbors? Thanks.
And
Thank you. I'm waiting 10 seconds now.
One more.
Sheila. You should be able to speak now once you unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes. Sue Sheila Gillis, 35 Split Rock Road in Village Creek. And my question is very similar to the previous speaker. I've lived in this area for a long time. The flooding has only gotten, astronomically worse. I've been to a lot of the presentations for this project. And I've heard things like, I've asked them how they're going to deal with flooding because there will be flooding, as there is everywhere. And I've heard things such as they're planning on putting up a barrier and so on. Anything that's done, I suspect, to remediate flooding on that property is going to have a profound effect on the whole area. And I think that really has to be taken into account if we're eliminating a wetlands designation, since that's part of what's there to help us deal with the flooding that's only increasing. So I think an important part of it is what happens with the flooding if we don't have the wetlands designation, if those start to go away, and what is the plan? What is MNRESA's plan for dealing with it, and how is that going to affect surrounding communities? Thank you.
I think that was it, Chairman Clark.
Okay, I'm gonna wait a few seconds because yeah. Okay, so Ms. Sachi, I'm sure you've taken notes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go for it.
Thank you. And thank you to the public for your comments and observations. We certainly appreciate it. Since there are, I'm sorry for the dog barking. Since the comments raised were largely technical in nature, my typical process would be to address them individually myself, but I think it would be more appropriate for either Michelle Ford, Nick Parisi, and/or Elsa Lohman to address the concerns raised about how the wetlands or how these pockets were evaluated, prior mapping, flooding, resilience. So if you would allow that, I think that would be probably more beneficial and probably more expeditious to do it that way, since they are the experts. And I just would like to call to your attention again at the outset of my presentation, I did indicate what the backgrounds were of these various consultants that are part of this team, and I do believe that they qualify as experts. You have not heard contradictory expert testimony tonight, so there is some weight that is to be given to the experts who presented before you. Having said that, Michelle, if you wouldn't mind, if you would address the areas within your area of expertise, then followed by either Nick or Elsa, I think that would be beneficial.
Thanks, Liz. And I'll just go ahead and give a quick lead in. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. We really appreciate you being present and taking the time tonight. Michelle, I think that if you could start us off with giving an explanation of the implications of the time of year of when a wetland delineation is completed with respect to the different indicators that we're looking for, such as the long period of time that it sets up that it takes to set up the claying soils. If you could speak to that. Also, I would just start off by clarifying that the wetlands that are shown on the 2016 CBI survey were not actually delineated in terms of this wetland 1 area and potential wetland 2 area. Those were not delineated in 2016. Those had been previously delineated in 2007 and were carried forward to the 2016 delineation. So there were no new indicators that were observed or looked for at that time. The other thing that I would say along with that is that the 2007 delineation, from the information that we have been able to gather, does not include any Army Corps functions and values forms, nor does it include any of the characterization, a narrative characterization of these wetland areas. So what we know is that these lines have been drawn on a map, and we don't have any other supporting information with regard to their previous wetland status. And then Michelle, if you could also then speak to completing those functions and values forms and when it's appropriate to complete those functions and values forms and when it would not be. I would turn it over to you to start with answering those questions, and then perhaps you can turn it back to me when you're done, Michelle. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And all great questions. And just, for the record, I've served on a commission before, and this is something that, as a commission member, I respect that you do not take lightly, and I understand why members of the community do not take this lightly. It's kind of a scary thing to talk about delisting something. Now, that said, as a soil scientist, a professional wetland scientist with almost 20 years experience, I could not, in my right mind, delineate these as wetlands because they didn't meet the criteria. I couldn't put the boundary somewhere to make it make sense. So that's why I couldn't delineate them. It wasn't because I was looking for anything, to move forward with any agenda. Again, there was nowhere to put the boundary because the boundary no longer exists. And so what I was trying to share with my screen there too, Elsa, was to your point with the 2007 work, the remediation work. On that plan, it states very clearly, and this is in Appendix B of the Wetland Delineation Report by EcoMaps, that those boundaries were from August of 2007. So again, we're still at almost 20 years of experience, or 20 years since the wetlands were delineated that are the subject of this application. Now, getting back to the time of year, that's an excellent question. But again, wetlands are not defined by a time of year. In a sense, they take time and repeat wet hydric events to change the vegetation, to change the soils. And in that, you'll also see that evidence of hydrology. So whether you delineate a wetland in April or in the drought of August, a wetland's still a wetland, again, when you're looking at that soil and you're looking at that vegetation. The vegetation may be stressed in August, but it's still going to be there. To have a preponderance of either upland or facultative upland vegetation is saying, hey, this area really doesn't get very wet. Again, that's why soils are great, because they take a long time to change. But again, we're not dealing with real soils here. This is an entirely filled area. So that's kind of getting back to the time of year. Now, going back, you could go back the day after 2 inches of rain and it may be wet. Now, that doesn't make it a wetland, right? You could go back 2 weeks after 2 inches. I would expect that it wouldn't be wet. But again, that's why we're looking at these technical indicators in the soils and in the other things that come into it, right? The vegetation, the aerial imagery, and the other delineation, the other reports, all that stuff in context. What's happening and why is it happening and how is it functioning? With regard to, Elsa, I believe you mentioned functions and values, but I believe what Kevin was talking about was the Army Corps data forms. And so that's part of the federal delineation. That's really not part of a state wetland delineation. And what those data forms are, and they're included in the report just for context, and also so this report can support any federal permitting. But those are basically 3 pages for each wetland flag. You have 3 pages for your upland and 3 pages for your wetland. Page 1 is hydrology, page 2 is vegetation, and page 3 is soils. And so that's why those are included. Now, those were not included for wetlands W1 and W2 because they're not wetlands. I couldn't make a form for an area that's not a wetland, right? So it's not that I wasn't including equal amount of data. It's I can't fill out a wetland form because it doesn't meet the wetland criteria, which is another reason why it wasn't delineated, right? I could fill out the upland form, but I wouldn't have a point to be able to develop those upland and those wetland forms. So that's why those are not included, because again, it wouldn't be prudent. And again, that's federal criteria. We talked about the 2016, 2017 concerns. Again, those wetlands were last delineated in 2007, and that is depicted in Appendix B in the notes on that 2017 remediation plan. The other thing I heard from several people was a third-party review. And what I wanted to state, and I'll actually share my screen here, and I said this in the report, I knew that this site was going to be complicated. And so that's why I brought out a fellow soil scientist with me, Ian Cole. So if everybody can see this, again, this is included on page 3 of the report under the wetland delineation, with assistance from fellow soil scientist Ian Cole. Again, I knew this was complicated and I wanted to have a second set of soil scientist eyes to help talk through some of this. So I'm not sure if that helps the commission. It's not a full-fledged third-party review, but again, I did have another soil scientist on site where we could talk through these things because they are complicated, especially when we're dealing with these manipulated soils. All right. And then one thing I did want to state just for the record to Kevin is you did question my professional integrity and who I'm being paid for. That should not come into play. I stand by my word, I stand by my credentials, and I stand by my experience. I don't care who's paying me. I'm going to do the right thing and I'm going to do where the data drives me. Okay, so I want that to be known by the commission as I stand by what I've done. Now, soil science, there is some nuance, but again, my work is not driven by who is paying my bill. It's driven by the soils, it's driven by the science, and that's why I'm here today. And Elsa, I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. So I'll go through and answer the questions that I was able to capture that pertain to the application in front of us this evening. There were a few other questions that I noted that potentially are more appropriate for the planning and zoning application. They're more related to some of the other impacts and not strictly related to just the wetlands and the treatment of the wetlands. So I'll leave those for the next meeting. And please, commission, when I get through this, if you hear any, or Liz as well, my team, if there's any questions that you have heard that we haven't answered yet, please help me out with that and bring that forward. So another question that I heard was, has DEEP, Connecticut DEEP, been consulted, and what was their viewpoint? We're working very closely. This team is working very closely with Connecticut DEEP and have been since the beginning of the project. We want to be sure that the end goal of the project, or the end of the project, provides the highest level of ecological uplift that we're able to achieve. We want to be the best stewards of the property possible. And with that in mind, you saw when we came forward and demonstrated what the master plan was going to be, you can see that there is a preponderance of ecological uplift across the site. So someone had asked the question, what is the purpose of having these wetlands delisted? The answer to that is so that we felt that we had an accurate wetlands map to start with, so that we felt that we were working from a clean slate. We knew exactly what the existing resources were out there, and then we're able to provide uplift in various areas. Whether it was a designated resource or not, there's still ecological uplift being provided across the site. But then, of course, this gave us the baseline for all of those designated resource areas so that we could make sure we were being especially careful about impacts and offsets in upland review areas. So coming back to DEEP's viewpoint on this, as I said, we've been working very closely with them, meeting with them monthly on a number of different items. They are aware of everything that we have presented here this evening. They're aware of the wetland classifications on site. They're aware of the nature of the former wetland areas and the intention to have those delisted as well. They have not commented around that because they recognize that that is not their jurisdictional purview in this case. And so they haven't weighed in with a personal judgment around that. They also have had no issue or have felt no need to adjust anything that we've brought forward to them. With respect to Circa, personally, I have worked with Circa quite a bit as well. They're a fabulous organization and they're doing tremendous things for the state around helping communities prepare for increased flooding in the future. I have not observed Circa to become involved in wetland permitting, and so that is not an avenue that we would pursue for additional oversight or review or coordination. There are certainly folks in that organization that have a lot of tremendous value, but it is just not a crossover in terms of their purview and their involvement in this case. So we have not gone to Circa. There isn't an intention to go in front of Circa with this particular project. There was a question about W2 was formerly used as a holding area and for industrial wastewater processes. There is a plan to make sure that the contamination within this area is dealt with. The entire site has a remedial action plan put together, which has been coordinated again through DEEP's remediation division. There are specific treatments for many of the different areas on site, depending on what was found there and what the ultimate final disposition of that area would be. And so all of that has been reviewed and is currently, for specifically the Wetland 2 area, is currently going through the approval process with Connecticut DEEP so that they can receive the final RAP approval, remedial action plan approval for that location. I would be remiss, I'm not going to try and tell you off the cuff what the specific treatment in that area is. I imagine that that information might even come forward more in the planning and zoning application hearing that we will have for that as well. That information is available and is something that could be discussed in further detail if that was of interest. So just to wrap up the question, there is a plan. It is a DEEP approved plan that is being put together by a licensed environmental professional, and it does require state approval before moving forward. Right now, in the very near future, we're moving forward, or we're hoping to move forward with a project in the northern 26 acres of the project, or of the site rather, that we're calling the North Forest area. This gives us an opportunity to give back to the community more quickly so that we can get an area open and get some trails put in there and be able to invite the community in. So we're only focused on this northern area. The W2 wetland area will be part of what we're calling the phase 2 work. We're just starting to move into that design. And so there will be no construction occurring in that area within the next year and within, an indefinite period until that design is fully completed. I'm just checking now to see what other questions that I have. There were questions about flooding and impacts of flooding. I will stay away from those questions primarily tonight as we're focused on wetlands. But one thing that I would say is I heard very accurately concern about treatment of these wetland areas and the impact on flooding, and understand the accurate statement that wetlands can have a positive impact on flooding and help to buffer flooding. The volume of retention that is present within these wetlands is both very minimal, first of all, and second of all, is negligible when compared to the type of flooding that occurs, because this is a coastal area and the coastal flood elevations are elevating above anything that these small wetland pockets can buffer. And so I would just venture to say that the topography of the site, it still is such that it provides the intermittent stormwater retention on site. There is a stormwater management plan that's being put in place with all of the phases of the project to meet all of the stormwater regulations and to make sure that we are reducing the impact of this flooding as much as possible, even beyond those regulations. And then when it comes to the large flooding events that occur here that are coastal, these wetlands have very little, negligible impact on buffering that type of flooding. So that's what I would speak to around the flooding and save the rest. Those are the questions that I pulled out of those conversations or those comments. I apologize if I missed anyone's question that they had. And I would just ask my team, Nick or Liz or anyone else, if there was something that you caught that I wasn't able to catch.
I think between Michelle's responses and Elsa's responses, we've addressed the comments raised by the public. There are a few things that I would just want to add. As I indicated at the outset of this discussion and this hearing, this is the first application of many that will come before boards and commissions in Norwalk and be reviewed by city departments, other agencies, state and perhaps even federal agencies. This is the first step. And it is important to properly and accurately identify areas that are wetlands and have those areas that do not qualify as wetlands under 22A, 42A general statutes, so that we can properly, accurately, and thoroughly move forward with design of the North Forest and of the project and the parcel in general. If you have no other questions, or if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. But that does conclude our presentation. I believe that we've answered all of the questions and responded to the comments from today. Mr. Chairman, sure.
Yeah, I think the commissioner still may have some questions or comments. So Ms. Knight, do you want to lead us off?
Hi, yes. Thank you for the presentation, for clarifying some of the questions. I just wanted to clarify for the record, because I think that it was maybe a little bit misleading in terms of the application, in terms of when us as commissioners saw it, that we first came onto our table in a November 18th meeting, which is when we met you. So we hadn't previously discussed this business in September. So I just want to clarify that, and that we hadn't, that was the only meeting that we had. Alexis? Does she want to? No. Okay.
I will clarify, it was submitted in September. Your October meetings, you ended up being both canceled due to the lack of a quorum.
Yeah, so we were just getting some more commissioners onto to help us make it over the line for the quorums. And so we had discussed, or there was discussion about, given the size and scope of it, about getting an independent assessment report. I'm not sure where that landed, but I guess the question I have is just in looking at the overall master plan, if it's, we're going through the effort of taking, the one of the wetlands off and then rehabilitating it and making it a swamp marsh, irregardless of the intent, whether it's man-made or not man-made. Some of these wetlands that were in the Manresa originally were man-made, but they still then fall back under the jurisdiction and scope of the Inland Wetland Agency. So I don't know whether we're just kind of going in a circle on one of the wetlands.
Alexis, could you answer or do your best to fill us on where we landed with regard to getting a third-party opinion? As I do not recall. Thank you, Catherine, by the way.
Sorry, I was muted again. So I was just trying to very quickly reread minutes, but it was my recollection that during the November meeting, there was quite a bit of questioning from agency members regarding how the delineation process worked, and wanted more understanding regarding how the decision, kind of a decision framework. And then in December, you did not have them on the agenda again, but you had received some updated, I think I did a staff report with some links to some updated information that the applicant had provided, which is now on the pending application webpage. On December 19th, they had submitted a wetland delineation addendum, as well as what's labeled on the webpage as a inland wetland determination process flow that just determined how they made those decisions. And then tonight was the public hearing.
Okay, so we never, it's gonna take me a minute to get back up to speed with those two documents that,
So there was some discussion, was my recollection of.
There was discussion of it. I had discussed that it probably would be prudent to get a third party. Like if you went through and listened to the recording, I don't think it made it into the meeting minutes, but I had flagged that as in addition to the documentation.
Okay.
But I think there was view of the applicant to say we want to proceed forward, we want to expedite and go to public hearing. So, you know.
Okay, so we'll put a pin in that for a minute. I think Paul, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. One, I want clarification, something that Attorney Suchi had said or mentioned, and maybe Alexis can answer. So were these former wetlands, were they on the city's list or recognized by the city as wetlands?
So no, the wetland, there's an inland wetland, official inland wetland map, which is a PDF on the city's webpage. The official wetland map, as stated by the applicant, has not been formally approved. You haven't gone formally approved with updated delineations, which requires a public hearing and other kind of formal kind of adoption of the map. Every time there is an inland wetland permit application, the GIS version of the inland wetland map is updated. And I don't have in front of me when we last did kind of a formal update of all those. I'd have to look up the last time that we had a public hearing and a formal kind of update to the official map that would take all of the updates that we make to each wetland application that comes in with a new wetland delineation to add those to the official wetland map. And so when they talk about the map, no, it has not been updated since we received the remediation applications that included those maps. But as Attorney Suchi described, the there exists within the Inland Wetland Agency's review history, relatively recent review history, other applications on this property that show maps, particularly this 2007 delineation and that updated 2016 that are kind of part of the record. That answer your question?
Okay, yeah, that's my question. Then just, a couple of comments. One, it's like I read, Michelle Ford's resume as well as her report, and it is very impressive. So I disagree with having to bring in a third or an independent party. She does appear to be an expert, both in her field and in court. And that's it.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Oh, shoot. Heather, I'm gonna give it to Elise.
Go for it.
Thank you. I do have a question for Ms. Ford, actually. So, I really do appreciate how thorough the presentation has been and sort of explaining why, these delineations, like why they're not classified as wetlands. But to your point, and I just want to ask in your professional opinion, being that there has been such disturbance, unnatural disturbance, and being that there's been so much fill in the first place, even with all your testing, is it really possible to say if something is a wetland or not, with the amount of disturbance that's already there? Like, is it meaning, has there been such a level of, for lack of better words, and forgive me, I know it's not really the right terminology, like man-made succession with all the fill that's there, even with all the data saying it's not pointing to, there's nothing in your data saying that this is a wetland, but could that just simply be because of all the disturbance that's been there? Could it potentially be a wetland, but just be a hurt one, for lack of better words? Could you explain that to me just a little bit more? I just would like some clarity to understand your presentation a bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. And that gets into chronology, right? Which is, where you look at what's happened over time. What does this look like? And also, for the record, it would have been a lot easier for me just to flag it as a wetland if it was. It saved us all a lot of headache, right? But again, the data just wasn't there for that. But, it just depends on how far back in time you want to go, right? If we went back to, let's say, 1940, this is all tidal wetlands, right? This whole site was tidal wetlands. And then they filled it in, right? And then the trees came in. And so some developed as uplands, some were little pockets. And in the report, that's why I thought it was important to show the aerial photographs and the history of what's happened over time. And that wetland that's in that northwest corner, that pocket, I really thought about that a lot, and like what's happened here, what's going on. And you can see it, how it was one of the last areas to be filled. And there was that little pocket, and then it just kind of succeeded to what it is now. So I don't think it's still a wetland. It's not functioning as a wetland. It doesn't have all the features of a wetland. Again, it would have been really easy just to call it a wetland, but I couldn't wrap my brain around how to call it a wetland and where that boundary would be. So I think it was a wetland. Sure, I don't dispute what it was before, but again, it's been 20 years since that was delineated, and the area is not managed. It's succeeded. Plants grow, trees and shrubs come in, right? They drop their leaf litter. You start to build up more, and you don't have that hydrology. Again, you don't have the water to come in to keep it wet. So did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you for that clarification and understanding my lack of terminology, but thank you very much.
No, it's a good question, and it's a real one. Again, it just goes back to chronology and context, and that's why this site was challenging too. And again, that's why I brought in Ian, right, another soil scientist, to look at this and help wrap my brain around it and talk through it. Not an easy thing.
Heather?
That was actually very similar. Thank you for that answer, Michelle, because my whole understanding here is that this was all tidal wetland in the past, and including the area we are discussing today. This might be a little bit of me not understanding the tidal regulations, but what is to my understanding, it's that the high water mark is I don't know the elevation of this site, and I don't know if it was on, there's a lot of documentation here. Um, so in my understanding of what is defined as tidal wetlands, it's anything that is adjacent to or part of a high water mark, even if it includes fill. And so I'm not very sure where the line is here, if you're understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And yeah,
I do. And just to further complicate things, so in Connecticut, tidal wetlands are defined by vegetation. So soils are out the window, water's out the window, right?
Right.
And in the regulations, in the general statute, it has a whole paragraph of all the vegetation. If they're present, this could be a tidal wetland, right? So
It does say
that's
capable of growing as well, right?
right.
The capability to grow those things. Yes, so it says here, I'm looking at it right now, and the reason this is the
Yeah.
reason I'm asking is whose surface is at or below an elevation of 1 foot above the local extreme high water. And I actually just don't, I'm curious about the elevation. Let's talk about the area we're talking about, right? What is the elevation of the area we're talking about? Um, so I guess that's a question for you guys. I don't know in the maps where to look for that.
So I can show you there were two tidal wetlands and then obviously Long Island Sound that were flagged.
Right.
And so those had direct tidal connections through a tide gate, right? So it's tidal influence. I'm not out there looking at elevation. I'm not a surveyor, right?
Yeah.
But I'm looking at, again, what makes sense, what's where. Now, the tide is not regularly coming up and over the road and into the wetlands that we are discussing, right?
Okay.
So those are not really under tidal influence. The other wetlands, I don't remember the numbers, and I don't know that it matters necessarily, but
Yeah.
on the wetlands maps, right? You had a tide gate. The tide comes in, the water comes in, it stays. We had fiddler crabs, we had salt water, we had Spartina, right? The vegetation community was different. There was another, either a tide gate or a culvert that goes to the other tidal wetland, right?
Yeah.
And so different suite of species, different vegetation, also different mechanism for hydrology. The two inland wetlands that are fairly close to there didn't have that same mechanism for introduction of tidal waters, right? And tidal flow. So for me, regardless of the elevation, I don't want to call, there you go, the W1 and W2 down at the south.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't subject to the tide, right? Even the highest high tide plus 1 foot, they're not seeing that water. Sure, if you get a hurricane, you're going to get some that blows in there, but that's not what the regulations are. And that's also the federal regulations, which are different from the state. So it does get complicated, but either way, that's part of how that was deemed. Now, I do not believe, nor has any of the other reports indicated that the two wetlands that are the subject of this hearing were under tidal influence or that they were tidal wetlands, right? Again, historically, we go back to, the early 1900s, the whole place is a tidal wetland,
Yes.
but it's been filled. And so it's how far back do you want to go? My task in 2025 was to go out there, hey, flag the wetlands. Here's what I'm seeing. Here's why. Here's how I did it. So I don't know if that, I hope that clarifies some things, but that's
Listen, I think for me, I don't believe I believe your delineation of, of it not being an inland wetland. None of this was, and it's sort of a manufactured one where it was, and so it's a gray area. I think my concern, if I'm being honest, is that this is privately held land, right? So if we make a determination based on the fact that I believe the report that this is no longer an inland wetland, it is no longer protected under anything. If this is sold again, this can be developed upon. And that is, I know, not the determination here today, but when I think about how far do we want to pursue this and think about it, that factors into my thinking.
Yep. And that's absolutely true. And that's kind of outside of my realm. Again,
Yes.
2025, go
Yep.
flag the wetlands. I flagged the wetlands. This is why, this is how I did it, right? It's a challenge, especially as a commission. You don't want to relinquish that control. I'm just giving you the data and why these are not wetlands and why these areas are.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate all of your knowledge that you've shared.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Knight?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is a tricky site because it has been so impacted, and there's been a lot of human impact on the site. I guess the question that I'm really grappling with on the wetland too, where you notice that there were the berms, is that, there were wetlands that were created for purposes of the function of the site, and I think that was one of the wetlands that was created. But just because it was created doesn't mean that it's like a Disneyland. It still then falls within the purview of the Inland Wetland Agency. So the intention of how it came to be isn't necessarily my understanding of if you make a wetland, it's a wetland. And it falls under the purview. So the question is, there's evidence of the berming that this was and is a wetland. And so to the extent that it changed, when it changed, is a result of some fill happening. And so then it doesn't necessarily mean, well, because whatever the previous owners were and what happened with the condition that they wound up doing activities, which then moved it from being a wetland to not a wetland, I guess is where, what I want to understand. Because I don't want to wind up that we're in situations where we have lots of applications where people are always making comments. And I'm like, well, this isn't, it's a wetland, but it's really on its dying legs. We have a very severely degraded wetland here. And, if we're just saying like, well, we'll just give up on all dying or dead or, thrown away or just humanly discarded wetlands, we're just managing the gradual, extinction of wetlands in some ways. And so that's the thing that I think is weighing on the commissioners' minds of like looking at this to say, how do we make the determination of like, how do we protect severely degraded and impacted wetlands, I guess. And so the fact that there are berms around it, we know that was, historically a wetland that was created.
Ms. Knight, if I may, before I turn it over to Michelle, I would just offer that what was created was a detention area. What was created was an impoundment. So it was a location that's able to receive water, but doesn't necessarily mean that it was a location that was receiving water in a way that set up wetland conditions. And so we recognize there's the berm, there's the containment, it was able to receive and hold water, but also recognize that when Michelle went out there and did the observation, despite having held water, as part of the operations over many decades, despite that fact, we still were not seeing the indicators that would qualify it as a wetland. So if I may, it wasn't that the original developers created a wetland area so much as they just created a detention area that did not set up into wetland conditions. Michelle, did you have something else to add to that?
Yeah, and I think that's an important distinction. I mean, think about it as like a stormwater basin at a shopping plaza, right? They just concentrate all the stormwater and it goes into there. It's a lined manufactured engineering structure. This was in a similar fashion. The difference here is that the hydrology was artificially created. They were pumping water to this to hold the water, right? And if you cease those industrial operations, you cease pumping water. It was never a natural wetland. Now, had it been created as let's say a wetland mitigation area with the purpose and intention of it being a wetland, and it had native natural hydrology, some type of connection to, let's say, a stream or something else, I think that's a different story. But this was a man-made retention pond where they were actively pumping the water into it just to discard their water, not to create a wetland. I think I just think that's an important distinction as to why it was there.
If I may just add, I pulled up one of the quotes from the reports that we evaluated in the existing conditions portion of this project. In the 2010 Phase 3 investigation final report that we inherited, it says, quote, note that Area W2 may not be a wetland due to its permitted CTDEP and Army Corps of Engineer usage as a dredge spoils area. In the near future, NRG will attempt to obtain city concurrence that W2 is not a wetland based on its current and former use as a barge slip dredge despoils area. And this is found on page 12 of the PDF of the 2010 Phase 3 investigation report. So just to circle back to, this was one of the catalysts for conducting, as Elsa had mentioned, the investigations, so that we started off the design phase with the most current information to help inform our restoration design.
Okay. Let's see, commissioners, we will need to make a decision about whether we're ready to close the public hearing. We don't have to, discuss it. We don't have to decide right this minute, but put that in your brains, as that's the next step, that we either ask for more information and we keep the public hearing open, or we decide that we've got enough information and we can close the public hearing. We cannot take in any more information from the applicant. And we make a decision next meeting, essentially. Or at least we put it on the agenda. So, and Alexis, by all means, correct me if I'm overstepping or whatever, but I'd like to get a read from commissioners as to, do we have all the information that we need? Is there the need for an additional third-party review? Do we think the current documentation as submitted is sufficient to make a decision?
I think we have enough, Steve.
Okay, thank you. Elise is nodding. I can see Catherine. Can't see anybody else. She's nodding. Okay. Heather's thinking. That's fine. That's always a good idea. Okay. Yeah, I think I have heard and seen enough. So I guess, Alexis, do you have anything you would like to throw in at this juncture? Okay, great. All right, so I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion that we close the public hearing.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, that would be Devin. All right, time for discussion. Any last thoughts? Sharing of concerns? Okay, so we'll take it to a vote to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think that's all of us. Okay. Alexis nodded. It's always good to get the nod from Alexis. Okay, so then I guess applicant team, as far as you're concerned, we will be putting this on the agenda for the 27th. Alexis, you're muted. Ba 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 ba. I can't read lips. Still muted.
All right. Sorry about that. Your regular agenda, I know that you kind of have this floating 7 o'clock start to a public hearing, but if you return to your agenda, which you still need to go back to that declaratory ruling, but on your agenda is discussion and or decision regarding this petition for map amendment. So you definitely have the opportunity to discuss more and potentially make a decision tonight.
Thank you. Okay,
Yep.
Well then let's just move forward. Everybody hang tight. I mean, leave if you want, but we will continue discussion in a different form on Ben Ray Salisbury LLC. And actually, oh, well, okay, it is exactly the next thing on the agenda. So a 25-069 Longshore Avenue. I'm going to try to keep it to commissioners now because
Well, you have to,
I
right?
have
So,
to.
right. So if it's
Fair.
easiest, I can either, yeah. So no one other than the commissioners can speak moving forward on this application. Just to be clear, even if you want to.
Paul.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I'll try to keep this as short as possible. Okay, I'm very familiar with Manresa. I used to live down in Harborview, which is on the north side of Manresa. I've seen that, and then I used to work in South Norwalk, and we were always down there for one reason or another. And I have seen that site change since 1985 tremendously. When I was first down there, that wetlands up in the northwest didn't even exist back then because we were able to walk and look at it in that area before we get to the security gate. And it's just, and I've also seen, the forest grow down there. Likewise, I've seen other places in Norwalk or up here in Vermont where I am right now, forest or grasslands turn into wetlands. So things do change over time, and I think you have to call it what it is at the moment. And so I'm inclined to agree with Miss Ford's opinion, that those are not wetlands and shouldn't be designated as wetlands, especially that pit that was collecting all that wastewater. It's not like they were creating a koi pond and, has to be preserved or anything. That's basically a waste site. What used to be number 2. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Paul. Other commissioners? It's only 8:52, guys.
Oh my God. I have a question, and I hate to open this can of worms because I really don't want to, I promise.
You don't have to.
No, I do. I have a question, I suppose, for Alexis, if you could help me understand. I was trying to understand Deep's role, their regulations, and I understand that they were they are, from what I've heard, very involved in this project, but I'm having trouble marrying that with what I'm finding online quickly, right? So that's where I want your guidance, is like it says specifically how they're defined, is
No.
Sorry.
What is your question?
My question
I'd
is,
rather not have you search. Just ask your question.
Sure. Well, my question is, I like the elevation map. Is any of this relevant to, like, Deep has not defined this as tidal wetlands, correct? Any of this? Any of the area that we're discussing today for this?
Right. I think that Miss Ford's delineation does not identify either area as either an inland wetland or a tidal wetland. Correct.
Okay.
So just because it's not a tidal inland wetland, it doesn't mean that it is in the recent past something that would be considered a tidal wetland either. There are certainly tidal wetlands on the site, but not in those areas.
Okay. The reason I'm asking, and I have found it, is that it says that tidal wetlands are defined as yada, 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 but including those that are now or formerly connected to tidal waters whose surface is at or below an elevation of 1 foot above local extreme high water.
Heather, I
The
used to
1 foot
I used to
below.
live down there. I'm familiar with Longshore Road, where that's very close
I'm
to.
not talking about the top part or the.
So
It's
there are a
elevated
few.
down there. It's
Yeah. So
it doesn't
they're
flood.
not title. Sorry, Paul.
No, it doesn't flood during tides. It doesn't flood during abnormly high tides even down there. It's not near the. You'd have to go across the road, and that's as close as it is to a tidal marsh or tidal wetland.
So a tidal, it is not a tidal wetland, because of its lack of that list of vegetation and its elevation.
Okay, that was my question, and I understand. I voiced my concern is the fact that this is private land. This can be developed on. If they choose to sell it, fix it up and sell it, it can be developed on. That is all I'm trying to say, and I'm what is my concern is, and why I'm trying to prove it
Right.
as.
See, you had asked about the elevation earlier, and
Yes.
the looking at the GIS map, which is not a T2 survey, but it's a fairly accurate representation of the elevation. The wetland two, the Stilling Basin, the big rectangular one, that has a average elevation of they're both in excess of that approximately that 5.4 foot elevation. So closer to like a 10-foot elevation.
Thank you.
So you're like it's not a wetland.
That's what I wanted to know was what the elevation was specifically, especially of that area down there. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Knight.
Okay, I just have a question for Alexis on the wetland 2, that if it's then made into a swamp marsh, is it then going to be delineated as a wetland?
Possibly. So you can have as Ms. Ford described, in Connecticut, wetlands are based on soil type. So eventually it might become an inland wetland, but not necessarily. So because wetlands are for your jurisdiction, for the state's definition of what an inland wetland is based solely on soil type, that means that you can have lawn areas that are a backyard lawn that are wetlands. You can have perennial or frequently flooded areas that aren't don't have the soils that indicate it's an inland wetland. So it maybe.
Okay. Well, I'm out of ideas.
Is that over? This is an exercise to come up with ideas to. I'm just joking. Hey, all right. Other commissioners? Okay. So, Alexis, how would we, is it possible to approve this application tonight?
Sure. So I did not. I know that I frequently come up with a draft resolution to aid in trying to draft motions that reflect the comments that I've heard from you. But yes, you absolutely can. You can use any of your past draft resolutions for any other like an activity application, which pretty much consistently say that that you've listened to the record, and that you have followed the your regulations in making your determination, and you can come up with.
And the unique thing about this, oh, sorry. No, the unique thing about this application is that we're not prescribing 2 seasons of growth and, man-sized boulders for demarcation, etc. There's not
Right.
those typical terms and conditions that we have put onto our resolutions.
Right. So you're either going to be granting the petition to amend the wetland map because your review of the testimony provided is leads you to determine that these areas should not be delineated as wetlands, or you're going to deny the petition to change the wetland map, and in that case, you're going to list very specific, clear reasons why these areas are wetlands, I guess.
Okay. So no one else has their hands up. So I'm not willing to put future potentialities, I don't even know if that's a word, in the way of what I think is a to be taken at face value application for this project. I think that it's a giant stinking pile of hazardous crap that this wetland formed on, and anything that the someone's willing to do to bring it into the condition that is usable is one that I can support, and I don't see any reason why leaving these wetlands defined as they are is not a huge sticking point for me. So I would move to grant the petition to amend the wetland map as requested. And I have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Okay, all opposed? All abstaining? Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4 for, 1 against, 1 abstaining. Okay. Alexis, parting words?
Thank you, Mr. beforehand.
We'll see you all again probably. Well, I don't know. I guess.
Right. So the petition is granted. Thank you, Minnesota team. And then Chairman Clockey, you're back on your agenda is the declaratory ruling that
Sorry?
So the declaratory ruling, I don't
back
think
there.
that they
I'm sorry, back to the Norwalk Park
they-
Direct.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, we have nothing else for the Manresa team. Sorry, I
It
thought there was
seemed
more
like
about
you were
this.
on a roll, right? So
Okay.
Minnesa's done, and you're back to item 5 on your agenda, declaratory rulings.
Thank you.
Back to 2
Thank you
hours
for
ago.
your time this evening.
Yes, it was a while ago, but
Ken, this is epic. I mean,
Guys, I give you guys a lot of credit. I mean, it's interesting, but I know what it's like. I give you guys a ton of credit.
Wow, thanks.
Maybe Parks and Rec wants to go for a public hearing.
Well, maybe Parks and Rec has somebody who wants to be a commissioner.
I have my Parks and Rec meeting tomorrow night.
all right. So this, so that in many ways is the question is, and I'll show you the section 4 of the regulations again. But the question before you is, are the activities that have been described by Rec and Parks? So again, this would be the installation of a trail. They're originally proposed to be slightly elevated with wood chips, but now proposed to be kind of a more of a standard, like Appalachian Trail, kind of, you've cleared your rectangle and blown off the leaf glitter. And the installation of a pedestrian bridge. The question is, are these regulated activities that need an inland wetland permit? Or are these activities non-regulated uses as defined by section 4 of your regulations? And then I'll just read paragraph C. So we've got through Paragraph B of your regulation says the following operations and uses shall be permitted as non-regulated uses in wetlands and watercourses, provided they don't disturb the natural and indigenous character of the wetland or watercourse. And that includes subparagraph number 2, which says outdoor recreation, including play and sporting areas, golf courses, field trails, nature study, hiking, horseback riding, swimming, skin and scuba diving, camping, boating, water skiing, trapping, hunting, fishing, shell fishing, and cross-country skiing, where otherwise legally permitted and regulated. Then we go on to paragraph C that says all activities in wetlands or watercourses involving filling, excavation, dredging, clear cutting, grading, excavation, erection of structures, or any other alteration or use of a wetland or watercourse not specifically permitted by this section and otherwise defined as a regulated activity by these regulations and shall require a permit. So that's really your question is, are these non-regulated? Do they include filling, excavating, dredging, clear cutting, grading, excavation, erection of structures, or any other alteration or use of a wetland or watercourse? Or does it need a wetland permit?
Okay. So I am going to propose that this is not a regulated use. The alterations do not constitute. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Knight.
There is a hand up.
I'm sorry. I was taking notes.
Yeah, I guess just the trails without any landscaping or cutting of trees or removal of deadwood within the wetland would not be regulated. But as soon as you get into cutting or removing deadwood within the wetland, I think that falls under a regulated activity.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yes.
What if that was under a separate request? So let's say they could get these trails made without doing any cutting or clearing. Or, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't want to let one part of it complicate the entire thing, right? I think we're all on the same page that it's a nice idea.
Yep.
We just want to be careful of how we define it so we are not stepping over the line with regard to our statutes, right? So I'm willing to consider ways to look at it that would, facilitate it happening. So I don't know if that's a helpful thing to say.
I just want to be cognizant of how we have handled past applications, like when people have wanted to put in sheds and things like that close by, that were not being perceived or acting in a way that's maybe more deferential or preferential to larger projects or things that we perceive to have public benefit versus private benefit. So I think we have to be neutral in terms of our approach between the two, because we're just looking at how we protect and think about wetlands, irregardless of the usage or benefit for private or public. And so I think that to the extent that we've had precedent in terms of what we've looked at for the landscaping or people looking at trees or removing vegetation, that we've considered that regulated activity.
True. But do we have to? Does the public benefit come into play or not? No,
not in your determination whether it's a non-regulated use.
Okay, got it. All right. And then have we in the past allowed, like the bridge, right, is the one like built part of this. What have we done in the past in those instances? Alexis, can you recall of an instance where you've come to us to ask if something is regulated or not with that same sort of
Steve?
Yeah.
I think it was in the fall there was a property down in Rowayton where they had a bridge made of logs.
And they're going to build a shed up on the hill. They're going across the bridge. And they
Right,
want
but
to
they
improve
put
the
the
bridge in order
logs
to
there,
get
and
up
we
the
would
hill.
determine that they were
Yeah.
allowed to build that bridge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Without, they came before the permit, right? They didn't.
They didn't
They
need
get
a
a they got
permit.
a permit for the shed, not for the
Right.
the log kind of stepping stone that they had put to access their property, right?
Yeah, and that had
Alex,
come
I'm
up.
sorry, what was this? What section was this in?
So it's section 4 of the regulations, and it's really page 10 of the regulations that you'd be well, PDF page 12, document page 10 of the regulations. I can share that on my screen if you
Please.
like.
Thank you.
So this top one is the that these uses are non-regulated. So I'll just note that for declaratory rulings, the office frequently makes rulings determined to be as of right, because it does include that a residential home can basically can maintain their property. So if they have a I don't know, a lawn in the wetland, they can continue to maintain their lawn. And we often get not applications, but requests from people that are maybe their activity of I don't know, very minor stuff. Replacing the deck stairs, but not the entire deck, is within 100 feet within your upland review area. We'll give them a declaratory ruling where we say we agree that this activity still falls within this kind of limited scope of sorry, I was in the wrong section for number 5, incidental uses to the enjoyment or maintenance of a residential property. So we issue a lot of these kind of, yep, this is as of right. This doesn't require a full wetland permit because it is so minimal in its scope. Pruning trees, hauling out dead fallen trees. If it's we encourage them to keep them, but if they if one's close to the house or whatever. So we do a lot of those. We get very few requests for a ruling regarding a non-regulated use. But we do get them every once in a while, and I just can't remember where they were. I know that you have seen some that had to do with silvicultural management and some removal of invasive plant species from within a wetland. And someone showed what they were doing and said, look, this is our scope, just so that you understand that we're not doing filling, excavating, dredging, all these things, but we are going to do selective removal of invasive plants. I don't know where I was headed with that. I guess I'm tired, but so that's really your what you need to figure out.
Right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
How is the bridge being built?
So it's going to be, it's dimensional lumber, so it's going to be brought in essentially piece by piece, and it's going to be assembled on site.
So it's like treated 2x12s.
Correct.
Using so I guess my bigger question is again, I was concerned over the heavy equipment being brought in but there's none of that being
They're going to
used.
hand carry it. They're going to hand
Okay.
carry it in.
But wait a second. What about the foundation?
It's auger.
Okay.
They're gonna no machine to dig the foundation. It's gonna be augered. Hand auger.
I'm
You're going full architect, Steve?
well, I'm bonking. I'm tired. And so I need help. It's okay to ask for help sometimes. I mean, ask Paul. I ask him for help all the time. All right, so help me move this forward, guys.
I'm
One way or another.
I'm
Either we make them go through the process or we don't.
what
I
it
don't think
what
there's
it,
a need, if I can add my 2 cents, I don't think there's a need to make them go through the process. I mean, I think I don't know if this should make me abstain from making this decision, but I have seen the work that Ken has done. I also am familiar with the city arborists who be working on this project. They're both professionals. They know what they're doing, and I think that they, in general, are held accountable, if not by this commission, by other powers that be. I think that it, not for nothing, on top of the fact that there is already the focus on restoration as it is. So even if there is some dead wood removed, I would argue that there is sort of that balance in place as it is. And that's, I feel like that in some ways is sort of out of our jurisdiction. It's a public safety issue and not a wetlands issue. If their concern is that, any of the dead trees that are there, are sort of a danger to the public. I don't know if that's a inland wetlands issue, which is, it's a public safety issue, rec and parks issue. So I don't see any reason why this shouldn't move forward and that they need to go through a permit.
so it sounds like a motion.
Well, but then I can see Alexis is putting this up on the screen. I mean, this clearly falls under outdoor recreation, nature study, hiking, etc. It's not direct, but it's associated, and I think that's close enough to the need to, build this little bridge. So, okay, and then, all right, Alexis, what else do we need? Oh, sorry, Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that like my question was answered and I'm satisfied in terms of like there's not a associated landscaping and it's minimal, then I agree that it's not permit, it's a non-regulated. It's just the trails.
Okay. So Alexis, how can we word this to?
So just a motion to make the finding that it qualifies as a non-regulated use as defined in section 60A-4.
So moved. Can I have a second?
Second, and thank you. Please make it prettier.
That's our goal.
Any discussion?
Just one quick question for Ken. I just want confirmation that any of the dead wood that's cut down is going to be left there to not.
It is. We're going to use it to line the trail. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Cool. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That's unanimous.
Guys, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully you're done with the meeting.
Good
Thanks.
job
Thanks,
waiting
Ken.
it out. Thank you.
Hey, that's
Thanks,
okay.
Ken.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, moving on to the regularly scheduled program. Acceptance of minutes. Does anyone read the December 9th minutes?
Well, I have a correction actually.
Yeah, love it.
Okay. Item C, I actually made an abstention. I did not approve of that item. I don't know if it's, yeah.
No,
Just
that's
wanna
good.
put that out
Thank
there.
you.
Okay. And
Catherine, you
that
mentioned something
said-
before.
What's that?
Sorry, Catherine mentioned, was that not that meeting?
No, not that meeting.
It was the one before. Yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
It was very summarized, which is fine for the meeting
Yes.
minutes, but I
just wanted to make sure.
Ms. Allen, would you like to?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes with that noted correction.
I'll second it. All in favor? Okay. Nice. Election of officers.
So moved.
I nominate Steve as chairman.
I nominate
Second.
Catherine as vice chair. Okay, so Alexis, can we buzz through it or do we have to follow
You
like
Because we're done.
we need
can
to
buzz
like
it at will. So
Okay.
you were supposed to have an annual meeting in December. I completely forgot to put it on your
I
December
thought
agenda.
so. I didn't want to
Thank
say
you.
it because
Oh,
it was.
you should have said something.
I know, but I. Anyway.
So yes, the Inland Wetland Agency / Conservation Commission has never been very formal in its nomination of officers. You've never formed a nominating committee. You have just kind of come to the evening of election of officers and had a bit of a verbal scrum, and then make some votes. So whatever kind of process you want tonight, go for it.
Do we need a motion to accept those two nominations?
Sounds good, Paul.
Okay, I make a motion that we accept those two nominations
I'll second that motion.
and that we give them a pay increase.
Absolutely. 200%.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
And then I guess you need technically a vote.
do we need any discussion?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right. All in favor? Great.
You probably
And
should abstain.
If and when someone has interest in being either chair or vice chair, do not hesitate to verbalize it. It's, yep, totally welcome and would be just lovely. Okay, so moving on. Catherine, you okay? You're good for another extending your tenure? Do you accept?
I accept, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as you're coming to the meetings, I totally have.
We didn't ask them if they accepted. We just voted.
Okay. Conservation initiatives.
No. I mean, yes, there's a lot going on, but no, I don't have anything to report at this hour.
No.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Reports. I don't have a
There's
report.
the call meeting coming up, just to flag. I think people got emails.
Oh,
let me-
CAWS or CAWS?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
The wetland, Connecticut wetland.
Connecticut Association of Wetland Scientists. There is a meeting in early
March 4th, right?
March.
Yeah. There's also the Connecticut Conservative Voter meeting on the 21st of January up in Hartford, and it's available online too.
The country, yep.
Yeah.
The what?
Conservation voters.
Conservation voters.
Yeah, the CT League of Conservation Voters annual meeting is the 21st of this month.
I went last year. It is really informative. It's really a good way to sort of connect with sort of.
And it's available
other
online,
like-minded
so you don't
folks.
have to make the
Yes,
trip
you
to
don't have to actually.
Hartford.
Yeah, I went when it was freezing and my car wasn't working, so maybe don't do that. Shouldn't we say that on record? But
I will
yeah,
send
there's that.
out the information for both of those to all of you.
Thank you.
I'll remind everybody that we need to take our wetland training as well.
Oh yeah, so I did. So I finally did hear back from Deep. It's still labeled the training for 2024 to 2025, but it now runs until the end of 2026. So before it kind of if you had started, it would have stopped at the end of 2025, but it's now good through 2026. So I will include a link to that training as well. And if you've already done it, just send it to me. I need to review the statutes again about when I need to send this off, but we've got a bit of time.
And you're good with just the certificate?
Yeah.
Don't tell us we have plenty of time.
No.
I mean, this is imminent.
Better.
Yeah. By the March meeting, it has to be done.
We should have viewing parties. We make popcorn.
Actually,
Put it up on the big
absolutely.
screen.
I can host it at City Hall. I will make you popcorn if you want to come into well, no, you can't. You need to do it's online, so you need to go through and click your own.
Yeah, we'd have to have our own screens. Shoot.
But
you want to set up something at the back of the office? I'm in.
If you tell me when you're doing it, I will deliver popcorn to any of you. Yeah, I know where you live. I make a mean popcorn, and
nice. All right.
I will drop it off. Any incentive. I'm here I'm here to support you.
Okay. Thank you. As senior environmental officer, would you have anything to report other than your popcorn making skills?
No.
Okay.
I think I'll stand on that.
Yeah. I don't blame you. Okay, I'll move to adjourn the meeting. Can I have a second?
Second.
I think Catherine got you, Heather.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're in third place, Paul. Sorry.
No, she's the vice president. No, she's the vice or the
Sure. All in favor.
Backup is what I am.
Thank you, everyone. Boy, this was a long one. So we haven't had one this long in a long time.
Is this a record?
Oh, I don't know.
Not for me, I don't think. Definitely not Alexis.
Well, we've had some late ones.
It's been once. I went to 1 a.m. So
This is just
Whoa.
make up for all of those meetings where we rant, this was due. I'm just gonna say this was
Yeah.
you've had some quick ones.
Good. Well, thank you, everyone, for your insights and contributions.
great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.